fleeting, flickering images in gold. A ruined tower surrounded by silver guard. Lorelei, the teller of Advent, approaches. In her hand, she holds a bloody sack. She climbs some stairs to an observation room, and a voice echoes around the chamber. Have you brought what I have asked of you? Lorelei looks up. She sees Equinox standing there before a vast window. Pillar of rock. Around this needle that juts into the sky, a black ball of energy orbits. Lorelei responds. It wasn't easy. Lorelei's visage shifts and changes. It is in fact the doppelganger Flick. You were generously compensated for your efforts, Equinox continues. Yes, I was. Failing. Were you successful in making the switch and applying the glamour you were provided with? I did, Flick responds, with a curl on the side of her lip. The glamour is in place. It should evade even his vision. They'll have no idea until it is too. Flick empties the sack, and a bloody, severed drow hand hits the floor. And Equinox's eye blazes in triumph. Previously on the Lorekeepers, I am known as the Grimoire, but you can call me Grim. I am a chronicler of legend and a focus to the telling. Since I came into the possession of Azerax, Marius, Taxes, Karrde and Raylan, I've narrowly avoided the following. Falling off the Cloud March, burning in a Stone's Blood refinery, being eaten by a Hydra, ensnared by the gloom mother of the ancient darkness, crushed by the Kraken of the Deep Lantern, and the persecution of the witch hunters. But such is the life of a Lorekeeper's grimoire. They are my Lorekeepers, and I'll do anything I can to protect them. When I was blank from cover to cover, I felt young. I felt new. And the actions of my Lorekeepers, well, they've shaped me into the grimoire that I am today. It is by their deeds that I am determined. I am kind. And I'm powerful. I've used my power to help my friends. I have pulled them into the telling itself to escape the witch hunters. Marius. Now, Marius has never really liked me much, but he nearly died. But when it seemed all was lost, he gripped Inquisitor Toth somehow. His mentor, standing there like a stopped clock. That's a nice sword. I think I'm going to kill you with it. It's a good line. I see all of these things that we've done, like they're happening in front of me. that we are yet to find. I see a fortress in the void. I see a river of mist. I see a dragon of stone and silver, and a pinnacle orbited by a wandering black sun. I don't feel young anymore. And I'm not going to fail them like I did Raylan. I must find a way out. There is a blast of golden energy that erupts across the landscape of the center of Farwyde. 4 familiar figures erupt from a different dimension and clatter noisily to the ground. I'm going to roll a d4. Karrde. How does Karrde land? Is it gracefully? Is it flat on his face? Tell me about it.
Never gracefully. Absolutely flat on his face. And painful. It doesn't take long for him to start groaning.
And Azerax, you're the next to follow. What do you think you saw in the telling? I would like you to tell me some glimpse, some fragment of legend that you might have glimpsed as you hurtled through a different reality.
I imagine plummeting through the telling is sort of like plummeting through a cylindrical tunnel going straight down of this golden energy. And as we're passing, I imagine that scenes from our past flash before our eyes. So as Azerax is plummeting, he looks to the side. He sees himself a small drow surrounded by other light-cast drow children, but older and female, his oldest sisters. They circle him with sticks and they turn. There's another child there, a boy, their age, larger than Azerax. They toss a stick to Azerax as if to say what he remembers, telling them to hit this child, and he continues to plummet.
The next to hit the ground from this rip in causality is a dragonborn, quite wounded from a grievous fall he took in the battle against the witch hunters, the brief and explosive battle against the witch hunters. How is Taxes feeling wounded and broken as he hits the ground from yet another fall?
At this point, Taxes has gone through the telling, I imagine he sees that image of the silver dragon skull, or the silver dragon in front of him. And it's almost as if as he's falling, he can feel that fire washing over him and washing around him. And he's exhausted. He's drained. And as he clatters to the ground, there's a crunch. There's an audible crunch. He has no, in comparison to how he would usually land, having his agility or his reflexes or his primal awareness of where he's at, he's been beaten so badly that he doesn't have that primal awareness right now. And so as he's hurtling to the ground, all of these images and small flashbacks of his life are flittering before his eyes, and then almost like coming out of a cloud, he falls from the telling and smashes into the ground with a thud.
And finally, Marius, you hit the ground, and it's, for a moment, maybe you black out for a second, but it's like awaking from a dream. Waking up, and then you remember that something terrible happened, and you'd very briefly been relieved of the pain of it. Maybe it's pain, maybe it's joy. Moments ago, you had pushed a large and elegant sword into the throat of your mentor, and that comes reeling back to you. What's going through Marius's mind?
When he was falling through the telling, he saw the scenes next to each other, exactly the same almost. One Inquisitor Toth holding that elf in place, unable to move and slowly killing him. And then next to that, Marius doing the same to the Inquisitor. And as he hits the ground, he opens his eyes. He thinks, I'm no better than this monster. Is this ever going to leave me?
And there is a soft thump as an open grimoire lands next to Azerax. Grim has landed about a foot from your head. Open. And you can see the final words of the previous chapter being scrawled. And he says, to you, Azerax, move.
What?
Move! Dexterity saving throw, please, Azerax.
Can you guys see that I was trying to be a big old badass like Hanker and Fernell and give myself a little dice cam? Can you see that up there?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a really bad resolution, but that's a natural 20.
Amazing. Oh my god. So I would like you, Locrius, to explain to me how Azerax is able to leap out of the way as the portal of the telling is closing. What appears to be the rest of your weapons that were left in the vault of the Witch Hunter's outpost comes pouring out of the gap of reality. You see the scimitars of Taxes and the great sword of Karrde just hurling towards you. How do you get out of the way?
I imagine after the wind is knocked out of him when he first lands, he's disoriented. He doesn't know what's going on. He sees Grim. He knows that he has to save Grim. So he rolls over, and as Grim is talking to him, I imagine that he sees this very scene. Reality is being written before his very eyes. And for the briefest moment, he sees the exquisite penmanship of Grim. Right. The drow deftly rolled out of the way. Some sort of strange precognition. He grabs the book and rolls out of the way right at the last moment.
And as you take a point of inspiration for that genius description, blades, armor, everything that you basically left behind just thuds into the ground. Karrde, you see the great sword with the black obsidian heart thud into the ground. Taxes, you see those scaled scabbards just bounce off a rock and sort of slide away from you. There is just a moment where there is silence, where you're all lying on the ground, breathing deeply from an ordeal that you could not describe to anyone. It's when you remember fragments of the telling. Like you'd opened a storybook halfway, in the middle, reading a fragment and then closing it again. Parts of your memories interlaced with legendary deeds that you have committed, and some committed by others. Maybe in the past, and maybe in the future. Ian, it's actually quite a pleasant day. A few clouds in an otherwise blue sky. The sun beams down. The grass is quite long, and it's wet with dew. The more astute among you would note that that would mean around morning. And you see the beauty, the landscape of Farwyde. But it's not entirely apparent where you are. What's Marius doing?
He's probably like lying on his back, breathing heavily. He was really badly injured in that previous fight, barely standing. And so he's probably just like trying to collect himself, his thoughts and his body, as he sees like weapons and instruments of death fall out of a portal. He doesn't have the energy to move, and he's just lucky that they don't fall on him. He just like is taking deep breaths, and then probably releases a bit of a chuckle.
I can't remember exactly what my state was at the end of the last session, Rob. It's been that long, but I don't think I was in very good shape either.
As I recall, you had been beaten pretty badly the night before the trial by combat, so you were in a rough way anyway.
If anybody's looking for empirical evidence, my character sheet says 0 hit points. Okay, so I'll be honest about it. I don't like it, but it's the reality. Also, I have 1 success on my death saves, so I imagine I'm just a pile of I'm a bag of bones.
I don't remember you going down at the very end, but I mean, let's just say that okay, if you weren't, then the telling's taken out of you. So you're drawing ragged breaths. I will say that you are stable. I will say.
All right, it might have been a fault on my failing to update the character sheet, but yeah, it's definitely.
No,
I hear the laughter. It's actually the laughter of Marius that snaps Karrde out of it, and he'll start laughing too, as well.
How's Taxes reacting?
I think upon hearing the two of them, he sort of sits. He's sort of like sitting up, trying to sit up, seeing if he can sit up. Pushes himself to at least a sitting position, and then looks over to the two of them. Steam comes pouring out of his nose, and it's almost like this bellow starts to form because he starts laughing too. Oh man. You were all right? Oh god, it hurts to talk. Shit.
And finally, Azerax. Everyone's laughing around you. You were nearly impaled a mere second ago.
I imagine that in the dewy morning, I imagine that this clattering of weapons just sent up like a deluge of not smoke but steam and mist that's still going up into the sky. And I imagine that Azerax, you probably the three of them laughing would see Azerax just sort of in a daze. I imagine his ears are ringing, sort of wander around with this large grimoire under his arm. And he'd walk up, seeing his 3 companions beaten, battered, and injured. Laughing, I think that he would start laughing too. What the hell are we laughing about?
Do you remember when I took Taxes' dude?
Oh yeah. Taxes.
What?
Mile, Byron, give us a style. Let's see.
And he actually feels the hole. He's like, nope, that's never gonna grow back. Oh shit. I'm all right. I'll live without it.
It's an improvement, you hear from across the field.
Yeah.
And then actually, what's that? Sorry.
Where the hell are we, is what he said.
Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was going to
Well, as it dawns on you, I would actually like each of you to make a perception check, please. Not a particularly difficult one. DC 10.
Everything's a difficult perception check for me. That's why we picked Locrius.
So in that case, Azerax is the one to spot it first. As Locrius, I keep calling you Locrius, Azerax, my goodness. Azerax is standing, and you're looking down at your friends, and you're all laughing, and then all of a sudden your eyes dart up through your visor. The arcane symbols that appear in the visor of Veritor, like that targeting system, focuses in on something in the distance. A large mass of people moving like a herd. Not too far away from you, sort of just on the horizon.
I think that as it would be evident that Azerax has seen something on the horizon. I imagine that even with the visor of Veritor, with the sun coming up, he's still looking through drow eyes, and the light that is, well, the light that is cast upon the surface of the world. I imagine that he would shade his visor and squint and try to see. He would probably voice his musings out loud. He would say, "It looks like there is some sort of exodus, a great throng of people leaving. Running? No, but a great many. How many would you say that there are, Rob?"
So it would be difficult to count, but you, from roughly what you can see, probably up to 100, if not maybe a bit more.
More than 100. I imagine that he would probably pull off his visor of Veritor for a moment. I imagine he has a splitting headache at this moment, and pinch that piece of skin in between his eyes and his nose to try to shake the cobwebs out. Put the visor back on and try to look around and to get our bearing, to try to place us, from what he knows about the continent we're on.
Yeah, and as Marius got the second highest on the perception, I'm guessing you sense Azerax spot this as well.
Are they coming this way?
That's a good question.
It is a good question. So they are walking not in your exact trajectory, but they are sort of, they'll go by you if you're there. They look to be, they'll be at you in about 10 minutes. You see that where you are at the moment, you're actually on sort of like a raised motte, almost like a small hill. You look across the landscape. The one thing that you do probably recognize is on your journeys across Farwyde before, you would have all seen the mountain range that almost look like stone waves. Mountain range known as the Stone Sea to the very of Farwyde. And you see that sort of in a fair amount of the distance, and you actually have sort of a vantage looking down on these this moving across the landscape. They don't appear to be marching. It's almost like a tired shuffle. Watching them approach, you begin to see that it's a collection of all different types of people. It's mainly predominantly humans. You don't notice any other different race amongst their number. They all look disheveled, tired, to just be continually walking, and you don't have long before they'll be near you.
Best make yourself presentable. They're coming this way. And Marius will like attempt to stand, but then just like and lie back down. And he would just like reach out with his right hand for like the nearest implement or weapon that he can like use to prop himself upwards.
Marius, you're bleeding.
I've been stabbed.
Presentable, you say, and you'll see. There's that. You said that sword with the obsidian was stuck in the ground, right, Rob? And Karrde will reach and just dig deep and attempt to pull that sword right out of the ground.
You do, and this is the first time you actually notice it as well. You pull the sword out, and it gleams in the morning light.
No.
Next to you, next to where you'd landed, basically, is still that strange-looking crossbow that had fired that line. The grapple bow.
And you're talking to me. This is something that Karrde sees as well.
Yeah, you took if you remember, you took like a crossbow, a weird-looking crossbow from one of the witch hunters and fired it, and it fired a line. So it basically, when you hit people with it, you were then essentially grappling them from afar.
Yes, and I think I had 2 of those, right?
Of the crossbow, and you have just the one. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. You're cutting out a little bit for me sometimes, like the odd syllable drops, and I'm sorry, I just get confused.
Oh,
it's
no. Oh, dear.
Not terrible. It's really not terrible. We're playable for sure. But
okay.
But I guess that Inquisitor's sword, let's end it this way. That Inquisitor's sword, as I kind of move towards that bow, we'll say, Marius, you see it just kind of get stuck into the ground right at your fingertips, since you were reaching out for a weapon.
He'll like nod a thank you, but I think Karrde's probably already moving away, and he like grabs the end of it and pulls himself up, just so he's standing again, and like takes some deep breaths and looks around, and he can see the state of his armor. It's like dented all over the place, and he's got like blood over all the leather and burn marks here and there and whatever, and he like thinks about the lunacy of trying to look presentable in his current state. He's got like bits of hair singed, and like he just like rubs his face and like tries to smooth out his hair a little bit, and then just like brushes off some ashen metal from the shoulder pad. Says, there, that'll do.
I imagine as this is going on, you might see Azerax. He's got this, he pulls out what it looks like a book at first, but then he unzips it and he opens it up, and it's got what looks like very fine grooming supplies. It's got a little pair of scissors. It's got a comb that looks like it's made out of bone. You can smell a little bit of jasmine. There's some sort of perfume in there, and he begins throwing these objects of like a haberdasher to his disheveled companion in a feeble attempt to try to make them look presentable.
Okay, so you brush yourselves down and you try and make yourself look as presentable as you can. If for any reason you were on like 0 or whatever, then you won't be like, you're stable, you're able to move, but you're just aching really badly. And it isn't long before you see this this collection of people, and there appears to be a woman leading them. She has red hair and the dapple of the odd freckle across her face. She has a sword at her belt and wears sort of like traveling clothes. She looks kind of like a wanderer. And she kind of stands out from the crowd because, one, she's armed, and she looks like she knows what she's doing. She looks like she's leading. The rest seem to just be following, sort of with hunched shoulders, their eyes to the ground. And a few of them actually spot you at this point and are kind of hesitant about walking near you, by you, whatever. They look at you, and you can see clear suspicion in their eyes. And the red-haired woman looks up. Who goes there?
Marius looks at the others, waiting for somebody to talk.
His eyes will be greeted with cards seeking the exact same thing from him.
Hello. That's all he says.
And
Good choice, you'll hear after a moment. A long pause.
The woman is looking up at you. You're still slightly on raised ground, and she says, I asked a question, and she isn't rude about it, but you do notice her hand goes to the hilt of her sword.
I'm Caius Miller.
Caius Miller.
Yes. We've become lost here in the woods.
She looks around. Oh, sorry. She just looks around, and there isn't a tree within a mile of you.
The hills, I mean. We've had a spot of bad luck. We ran into some trouble. As you can see, we're wounded. We don't mean you any harm.
She looks at you and eyes you rather suspiciously, but she doesn't voice those suspicions, and she says, well, we all here know what it feels like to run across bad luck. And she looks back at the mass that is kind of following her.
Where are you headed? You could have there, right? What did you say?
She says, why would you want to know?
Oh. Well, we have no food and no water and nowhere to sleep. But we do have some skills. We could protect these people if you're going somewhere nice. And if you fed and clothed us.
She looks down and eyes you again, equally suspicious, if not a little bit more. And her eyes scan the motley crew that you are. 2 humans, a drow, and a dragonborn. And she says, forgive me, but we have run into a number of troubles on our journey. While we have suffered losses on our way, or to trust outsiders, we've been on the road. If you can call this a road, she looks down at this vague patch of grass that is a bit lower than the rest that surrounds you. Miller, what is your profession?
Rob, I have a feeling that you cut out a whole bunch at the end there. Sorry, that was. I didn't hear.
Am I cutting out really bad for the rest of you as well?
You did a little bit for that one, yeah. We heard what is your profession at the end, but it was like there was some of the meat in the middle we missed.
Oh, that was me.
I don't know what to do, guys. I don't know what to do about that. I'm not sure.
Is the easiest thing. If you turn off your camera, it'll cut down your bandwidth.
Shall I try it?
And that last one was just me, not you. So I'm going to do the same thing.
Okay. All right. I'll give that a go.
This is Karrde's new form. His material form is a passport stamp with a D20 on it.
Yeah.
And
okay. Let's give this a
dusty
go.
storage container of the channel on it. There you go.
Okay. So basically, she looked up to you. Apologies for that. She looked up to you and says, "We have had troubles on the road. We have experienced. We have come across and we have lost people on our way so far, and we are not looking to trust outsiders. Is essentially what she voiced to you.
Well, you got to trust outsiders.
And why would that be?
He stares blankly into her eyes, like he's never gotten this far before. And at least with that point, and he looks back to Marius, shrugs, and says, "Well, if everyone's your enemy, then you ain't ever gonna grow." And he kind of looks at Marius for approval.
Marius's eyebrows like raised, like, "Wow, nice." Gives him this look of like, "That's profound." And he nods.
Don't be that surprised.
It's as you've spoken up, Karrde, and you look at this girl, and there's almost like a twinkle of familiarity. It's almost like this person, this red-haired woman, recognizes you, and you recognize her.
Oh, no.
This is Lyra. And Lyra is someone who was a little bit younger than you, with you in the town of Kilgannon.
Did you say raised with me or lived with me in the town?
Your age and lived in the same town, so knew you.
Okay, all right. At that moment, Karrde is going to immediately look again away and look to Azerax and actually nudge Azerax forward to speak. Actually, you know what? We'll make it Taxes. And the reason we'll make it Taxes is because Karrde would think that Taxes could talk for days. And so he's just going to nudge him forward to get some sort of conversation started to get the attention off of him. Because he is under the impression maybe she doesn't recognize him yet. Hopefully.
Karrde, what the hell you want? Oh, shit. And he's finally like standing up to his full height, right? Like I imagine he was probably just cleaning himself off, like fixing it, like spitting into his hand with some fire and cauterizing wounds on the side of his body and things like that. Just like, what the hell do you want, man? Oh, Jesus. Ma'am? And he just nods his head. Like, he just says, ma'am, and nods his head. I don't have a lot of experience talking with your kind.
You'll get a heavy sigh comes from Karrde Kilgannon's direction. And he begins looking around. Are we close to Kilgannon? Can I get a gauge? Because I have been there before. Can I figure out where we are?
Yeah, you of course have. And as you're sort of coming round to your getting over the disorientation of being thrust from the telling, you, without a check, know that you are within 2 days journey from Kilgannon. You know that it is a settlement that is not far from the gate of Gar-El, where Weaver's Hovel was, where you originally met the rest of these guys. So it's 2 days.
Yep. Then Karrde will look to you said Lyra or Lyra?
Lyra, I'll put it in the chat.
Face. Lyra, thank you. Lyra's face, and recognize immediately that he's been recognized, and that maybe he might be able to get his group out of this jam here. And he'll step forward and he says, "Good harvest." Just almost under his breath, his eyes pointed upwards at the sky. He sees bits of rain, storms pouring that maybe once poured on the horizon, or he's reminded of them if it's not the season. But he says it as the customary welcome that he grew up learning and knowing in Kilgannon.
And Lyra smiles, and you can see just from the look of her eyes that the recognition As you finally caught up. You finally caught up to her. And she says, to your question, a good harvest, and she says, Galdari has blessed it. Galdari is in fact the god, the old god of the harvest. And clearly, you've kind of made that connection, even though it's unspoken.
The skeptic in Karrde's chest almost reaches his eyes, but he catches them before they roll. What's the kind of the faith here in this area? What's the belief system that a majority of the people follow?
So in Farwyde, predominantly it is of the old gods, elemental beings that were prayed to since the world was young. There is, however, a new order that sweeps across the land known as the Observance, which is the collective of organized faiths, which is basically the religion of the god king himself.
Excellent. Okay, so he nods, but doesn't continue the conversation. His olive branch has been set out. And he nods back to Marius, and he says, "My friend Kaish has a few things to say." And he looks to you, Marius, and says, "Well, Kaish, get us where we're headed."
Yes, sir. So, Lyra, about coming with you. You asked my profession. I'm a warrior. You can see by the look, the rest of us, that we are useful in a tight spot, and we would happily accompany you where you're going and protect these people. You cannot do it alone, although I admire you for trying. And if you are willing to feed us and maybe take a look at some of the worst scrapes that we have, we'll happily accompany where you're going, and then we could part ways there.
She eyes you, and her eyes scan across your company once again, and she says, "We have food to fill our stomachs. However, seeing that you are, despite your battered appearances, you also look to be capable, at least at first glance anyway." And she says, "But from the looks of you," she looks at Taxes, the towering dragonborn, "I'm sure you could hunt for us."
He looks your line up and down, Lyra's traveling group. And is it mostly just like farms people that would like just normal townsfolk? Or
it's very interesting, because it would seem, like I say, basically it's a human convoy of people, but they all appear to have different walks of life. They are all ragged and dirty, and they've clearly been on the road a long time. But you can see that there are clearly people that had worn fine clothing that is now. And then you see someone standing next to them who is wearing peasant garb, so all walks of society, but now united in one common.
He looks them over, simply just assessing how many hunters, how many people look like they could be able to fight, and he does a head count just by scanning over the top of them.
Yeah, sure.
It'll take a while. But yeah, I could hunt you down some food. You might want to give me a couple of bodies, but I can protect them.
And from your head count, you're looking at the people who you think, from your standard Taxes, would be able to defend this convoy. And really, honestly, not many. There are a few people that look like they have a strong arm, men and women that would fight for survival. And that's probably what you're counting on in this kind of situation. But in all honesty, not many. These people look disheveled, and frightened. They are still standing a fair way back from Lyra, who's stepped forth to speak with you. But Lyra herself seems to have come around to the idea of you coming along, and it's almost like it's once she shared that look with Karrde, but her demeanor. And she says, "We've been hoping for Ganon. It is the nearest defensible location. We've been set upon across many days by the ones." And she's about to continue, and a voice cuts her off. A nasally voice from back in the ranks. And he says, "Why are you talking to those outsiders? They could belong to the ranks of Advent themselves. Press on."
Marius spits on the ground when he hears Advent.
And this fella steps forth, and he's a heavy-set dude. He's completely bald. He's actually about the same height as you, I'd say, Marius, actually, but he's got a bit of a gut as well. And he steps forth, and he appears to be wearing like an apron and just raggedy clothes from being on the road for so long. And he says, "We'd be a fool to trust these people. They could just be a trick. It could be a trap."
Advent has taken more from us than you could possibly understand, little man. We have faced them countless times, and we have come out on top, but barely.
And this man, he looks to Lyra, and he begins sort of about to interrupt her and sort of start arguing her, but a voice fills all of your minds. Familiar voice. It is that of Grim. These people, that man, he has a story to tell. Show you if you want, or perhaps to tell you what it is. It is up to you. I don't like the idea of invading their privacy of their own thoughts, but it is up to you.
Marius has sent back a thought, if that's possible, that he is strongly against the idea of invading anyone's privacy like that. That's something the witch hunters do, and he doesn't do that anymore.
Grim sort of stops and he says, yes, of course. And it's almost like he's questioning why he asked you that question.
Azerax will step forth, having been silent this whole time, and he'll address the man with the nasally voice and the apron, and he'll say, "You there, you have a tale to tell. Let's hear it. Perhaps we can share tales on the road. Because I'm sure looking at me, I do not look like someone you would trust. But look at the man to your left. He was once a rich man, cast on this path with you. Is it not so? Why should it be any different than the four of us? If we were Advent, don't you think the ambush would have been sprung by now? We've been thrown into this together. Come, let us walk. This gets us nothing standing here by the side of the road. You tell me your story, perhaps I would tell you a few that you might not believe, but I guarantee they are true."
And Azerax, you notice a few people in the ranks sort of almost smile at your comment. Humor that they've not had for some time, you can tell. And the man almost senses the people behind him sort of almost agreeing with you. And he says, "Oh, tales. how our city burned, how we were forced to flee. Is that a story you want to hear?
It is a sad tale by the sounds of it, but yes, this is a story that I would like to hear. It reminds me not, in a sort of an uncanny way, of a place beneath the ground. And I think Azerax would walk forth and sort of step up next to the man and turn his shoulders as if he's prepared to walk down the path and take the first walk in the direction that they were going, trying to sort of use his confidence to get everybody moving in the direction they were.
Definitely. I would like you to give me a persuade roll, and if it's good enough, then absolutely your charisma and confidence will actually set the convoy in motion, and you'll actually be moving.
All right, here we go. That's a 12 on the die. I'm not proficient. It's a +2, so that's a 14.
I'm going to say it's enough. You won the people over by sort of your remarks earlier, and you all begin to move and fall into step. And the only person who appears to be hesitant about it is that man, this large, bold man. And he eyes you with suspicious, piggy eyes. And he doesn't actually move with you. He just stands there as you start walking away, and he says, to continue. If they're going with you, I don't want to be any part of this. Our city burned because of those who tell tales. Our prince was killed by those who tell tales. Our city was set alight by those who tell tales. And that is why it was taken. It suddenly begins to dawn on you. These people are for freedom salvation.
Marius takes a step forward and he looks at the man and he says, do you think you're the only one who has suffered in these times? Do you think you're the only person who has had a hard time in their life? You are being extremely selfish. And this act, this petulant whining that you're going through is just slowing everyone down. We need to move. We need to do so quickly. Get it together. We're moving.
He moves as if he's going to hit you.
Let him try it.
He will. That's an 18 on the die. That is an unarmed attack. That is 2 points of damage in the face, Marius.
Okay. I'm just going to look at him and I'm going to say, that's one. I'm going to allow that to happen because I want to make a good impression on these people. We are not violent or hateful. But if you try that again, I will remove your head from your shoulders.
Yeah, Karrde looks around and then looks at the man and says, don't be the one guy standing up against the tidal wave, son. As these people, I imagine people are walking around us while this is happening.
Both of you take a point of inspiration for Marius. That just amazing put down, and that amazing line from Karrde, don't be the man to stand against the tidal wave. I love it. The guy falters, like he punched you, Marius, and it's almost like it was just ineffectual. Like your jaw jolted to the left, but that was it. And the rest of the convoy move regardless, and he remains standing there and eventually takes his place in the line.
As we're walking, I would like to walk next to him, and at some stage I'd like to put my hand on his shoulder and say to him, like, look, I understand that you have been through hard times, but we've all been through hard times, and the only way that we get through these hard times is together. And I'll just squeeze his shoulder.
And he looks at you, and you don't see any forgiveness. Well, I say forgiveness, he's the one in the wrong, let's face it, but you don't see any kind of reconciliation there at all, Marius. However, he isn't angry with you anymore. He just stares into your eyes and he says, I heard him. You don't understand. Well, the Salvation Guards, they were trying to put the fire out. Everyone was trying to help put the fire out, and no one was looking over the city walls. The Western Gate was disintegrated, and their forces poured inside. Everyone was unprepared. Hundreds, thousands of people were murdered that day. And as we were escaping, the Eastern Gate, the one furthest away from their numbers, he was there. That thing in that mask. And you know what he was saying? A man, a guard of his, he stepped forward and he pointed at us and he said, my lord, shall we stop them, my lord? And that thing, he said, let them spread the word of Advent's victory. Allow them to harbor hope and then take it away from them. And every single night that we have moved away, Advent has struck.
I am sorry that you went through that. We have faced him also, and we have seen the things that he can do. And I've sworn an oath that will end him somehow. We're not your enemy.
And he looks down as if sort of like contemplating everything you've said. And then he sort of straightens his shoulders and he looks you right in the eye, Marius, and he says, Yardley. That's my name, Yardley. And he holds out a hand.
Marius.
And he cocks an eyebrow and looks at you, thinking you to be a man called Caius Miller. But he doesn't say anything, and he sort of gives a wry smirk. Understanding. At the head of this convoy is Karrde. You are just walking just behind the pace of Lyra, who has continued pressing forward, leading this caravan of folk across the realm of Farwyde. And she hasn't really kind of acknowledged you in any way since the last time that you spoke a moment ago.
And we're still a couple days out, so we have some time ahead of us.
You certainly do, yeah.
Karrde's looking back, and he sees that Marius, or Caius, is like he sees a moment when his hands on the shoulder of this soldier who's formerly a little bit rebellious, and now he's marching with a little more spring in his step. He's standing a little bit taller. And Karrde thinks to himself and maybe even mutters, "You bastard can't have it both ways." And then he turns back around, and I imagine Lyra even maybe that catches her ear, and she looks. And after just a moment of catching her glance, he says, "So how have you been, Lyra?"
She sort of gives you a sideways look and smiles, and she says, "Oh, I've been better." And she sort of gestures at how ragged everyone looks and how she looks pretty disheveled. Clearly been on the road for some time.
Well, I ain't no
were turned
showman.
away.
And he looks at himself, and I imagine my garb is tattered as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, as ever, Karrde looks as disheveled as the day before, and she sort of grins and says, "We headed east, but we tried. We thought the closest and safest place would have been the Stone Sea, the dwarves there, but they're nothing but glorified bankers. They wouldn't permit us entry. My only thought was to head home. Not that I particularly want to. She sort of shrugs. But other than that, I'm fine. She gives you a weak smile, sort of like looking back across the people that she's clearly been sort of leading ahead. You remember Lyra, much like you, enjoyed wandering the wilds and has a kind of a vast knowledge of at least this particular area of Farwyde. You guys were pretty close friends once. As a matter of fact, you would have, in fact, potentially have shared a few stories with her of those that you'd heard from other sources, shall we say.
Okay. Oh, I see. All right. And he's going to ease his way, maybe when they're swapping tales back and forth, he's going to ease his way into a more uncomfortable conversation. He's going to, kind of look at her and say, now, we've both always been loners here. And he looks at this massive crowd of people just stomping across the plain, this caravan now. Armless, toothless, supplyless caravan, hoping for some sort of hopeful ending at the end of this long journey. And he says, but this is a lot of people. I don't expect we're going to get much in terms of helping you all. And he kind of looks at Azerax, and he looks at taxes, and he even looks back at Marius. He says, and it might be just a couple days before we're off.
And she looks at you and she says, none of us, as you know, Karrde, choose to be on our own. At least we didn't. You're right. We've got to cling to something. And right now, that's home. These people you're with, who are they? I mean, you always kept strange company, and she sort of glances back at the towering dragonborn right behind you and says, I've never seen a dragonborn before.
Huh. Well, I've seen two. And he looks back and looks at his companions and says, I don't even know where to start. I imagine if there was a book, you'd probably start at the middle. And I don't want to give away too much. It'll ruin the mystery.
You mean that's Weaver? I thought you made him up.
You hear a chuckle. You hear a chuckle come from behind their back.
I'm about as full.
Yeah, you don't recognize him? Karrde speaks up before Taxes can say anything else. I imagine that she is the kind of person that he might play a joke on. Weaver, come on up and meet our new guide.
And he gives you this look like, what? And then he just sort of...
I'll be right back. I gotta go check on the arms. I gotta go check on Caius. And he brushes past Taxes, slaps him on the shoulder, and says, good luck, buddy.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Ma'am, nice to meet you.
He kind of growls in your direction, almost like a dog that's being told to do something that he doesn't want to. This makes him feel very uncomfortable. So I imagine there's this long silence as soon as you start walking away and leaving, where he's standing there. And he extends a claw to shake her hand, but he says nothing at first, right? It's like he just seems huge and very, very quiet. He doesn't seem like the type of book smart individual that maybe Weaver has been described as.
And from the look on her face, Taxes, you could tell that she, from what the game that Karrde's playing, she knows how this dance goes. So she looks at you and she doesn't say anything for a while. And despite her hesitation about never seeing a dragonborn before, she actually takes your hand, your claw, and gives it a polite shake and says, Charmed.
Look, I know I look like a vicious son of a bitch, all right? But I ain't gonna kill you if unless I want to. So he looks back at Karrde. Considering you're a friend of his, we'll just say you're not on the menu right now. But look, I've seen a lot. I've forgotten a lot more. And quite honestly, outside of Weaver, I'm the only other one of my kind. At least that I know of. So,
And he looks back and he sees like the slew of people. And for a moment, he is reminded of Cloud March. He is reminded of that first moment when they all sort of met each other.
I'm going to keep y'all safe. Best I can. I'm tired of seeing that masked son of a bitch tear people apart.
Speaking of tear people apart, I'm sorry. I won't kill you unless you want to. And she smiles, seeing that clearly words aren't Taxes' strong point, but she smiles and she gives you a reassuring pat on the shoulder and says, I appreciate it. What's your name?
Well, to be honest, I don't really know, but people call me Taxes. And
Taxes.
Yep. I don't really know much else about myself. But you seem like a leader. Are you? I mean, how long have you been leading these people?
I'm what I need to be, I suppose. She looks around. I'm leading by example, and she gives like a glance back towards Karrde's direction, and then she sort of increases her pace and sort of starts walking ahead of you. Now, this is going to continue. You guys are actually heading in a southerly direction to recognize that you're approaching lands that you have traveled through before when you guys had gone south from Freedom Salvation in search of Weaver that time. And night falls, and you know that you will likely be able to make at least the Gate of Gael by tomorrow. Is there anything you want to do? You notice that the travelers are setting up rudimentary sort of makeshift shelters and tents and things that they've sort of managed to fashion together out of clothing and old rags and tarpaulins. At night at all.
Marius will not tolerate a messy campsite. He's been just conditioned to not allow that, so he would make sure that the tents and stuff are in clean lines, that there's a latrine dug, all that sort of stuff, making sure that things are organized and clear. And even if the people are grumbling, he would be pretty insistent.
Well, we're only going to be here for a day, shouts Karrde while he's like uselessly moving gear around for Marius.
Marius would go over to Karrde and say quietly, yes, one night, but if something happens in this one night, then an organized campsite is a lot better than one in disarray.
How would Azerax be like sleeping or resting at this time? Like, what would his setup be? Because I imagine Karrde would look for Azerax and say, well, look what he's doing. Like, that ain't exactly ordinary.
So I imagine, if I may back up just a little bit, I imagine that as we're walking, as everybody is having their conversations on this long march, I imagine that Azerax is going to speak to the crowd of people. He's going to try to bolster their spirits a little bit. And he's going to say, okay, everyone, who's heard the tale of the Lorekeepers and the Hydra. And he will go into detail, not about us specifically, but about this ancient legacy group known as the Lorekeepers and how they fought this great battle. But as he's doing so, the words of the story are not what's going through his head. What's going through his head is something that the man in the apron said. Every night they attack. Every night they attack. Azerax thinks to himself, how do they know? How do they know where they are? Unless one of them is here already. So as he tells this story, he's walking through their ranks. He's patting people on their backs. He's fixing a rich person's cravat here and there, getting nice and up close and personal, trying to see if there is a mole in this group.
That's pretty awesome, man. I really like that. As you're doing so, and as you make an insight check, please, Chris, I will tell you this. At the mention of the Lorekeepers, you notice almost the crowd recoil slightly. It seems to be common knowledge that when whatever happened in the Mountain Crown, the fortress at the center of Freedom Salvation, where Prince Artoon died, it looks to be like that, and the fire is all linked to the Lorekeepers in their mind. They, a lot of them consider the Lorekeepers to be the assassins of their prince and the burners, the arsonists of their city. And
really
sorry,
you're
in
really good idea.
So they looking kind of a bit horrified.
I
However,
think that Azerax would just switch to a different story then. I imagine that his jaw would hit the floor, realizing the scope of what has gone on. Not only was this city overtaken and destroyed and its people ran out of it, but everything was pinned on us. So I imagine that there's a moment where he shakes his head and he says, okay, very well, I will tell you a story of the deep lantern of Talazan, and he'll go and tell them a drow parable instead.
And as you're making your way around and you're trying to change tact, you hear Grim in your mind, Azerax, and he says, "That's how you kill a legend." Your insight check, however, the night sort of passes, and I'm going to assume you do your usual shifts of going on watch. But as you made the insight check, you're particularly vigilant, Azerax. And the big man, Yardley, you notice him sitting by a small fire, and something glints in his palm.
Azerax would reach out, instinct taking over, reach out with his mind to the other Lorekeepers. Something about the big man, Yardley. It's not right. I don't trust him. If these people are attacked every night, someone is telling them where they are. And I think with that, we would see Azerax is probably attempting to study his spell book up sort of on the fringes of the camp. I imagine that Karrde is there too, right? Wasn't Karrde going over to see what Azerax was doing? That's exactly what he'd be doing, would be fidgeting with his spell book. So I imagine that he would grab Karrde and sort of point with his chin as nonchalantly as he can at Yardley, and then get up and start making his way over to him.
Karrde pauses and lets Azerax kind of move forward, but it's not long before Karrde follows. But he's trying to get a glimpse of what's in the hands of Yardley. Is it at all possible from this distance? I imagine Azerax would see before Karrde did. Uh-oh.
Sorry, I think I missed that. What? So what is it that you're actually doing? Sorry, I missed that. That's my bad.
We're walking towards Yardley. Azerax is in front of Karrde. We're both kind of walking in single file towards Yardley,
Okay.
trying to see what he's got while we're walking.
Yes, sorry, I heard that and then blanked out of my own mind. That's great. So anyway, you're walking towards him, and he sort of sat cross-legged, his big form sort of slumped over, and you catch a glimpse of what is in his palm. It's a small mirror. And he looks up as you approach, and he kind of gives you a genial nod as you come to stand by the fire that he's sat at.
As Azerax approaches, does he put it away?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even sly. The guy is he doesn't have deft fingers, and you can see he tries to palm the small mirror as you approach, and you're not entirely sure whether he saw you see what was in his hand, if you get what I mean.
Azerax would just walk right up to him and say, Yardley, do you mind if we sit for a minute? I think we got off on the wrong foot.
And he goes, yes, of course. Yes. Please sit.
You have an apron. Are you a craftsman by trade?
Yeah, Smith.
Oh, really? Silversmith?
Iron mainly.
Iron. Oh, interesting. With these soft hands haven't worked a day in their life.
He barely manages a polite smile.
Interesting.
Are we interrupting something?
And he looks to you and he says, interrupting something? I'm afraid I don't know what you mean.
Karrde will, without saying a word, just look to where the kind of small mirror would be located, just like a stern glance.
And his eyes follow your gaze, and then he looks up and he sort of gets up and says, it's late and I'm tired. And he walks over to a sack that he pulls over himself and sort of huddles across onto the other side of the fire.
Once he's out of earshot, Karrde will look to Azerax and say, I'm going to stab him in the throat.
Just 1 second. Hang on 1 second.
Sorry, that got me.
So,
let me try one thing. If it doesn't work, you stab, okay?
Karrde shrugs. Well, okay.
Azerax takes a small piece of copper wire between his fingers, whispers a small phrase. As he casts the message spell into Yardley's mind, the newcomers are my allies. You will tell them what you have learned.
And a voice echoes back. And it says, I take no command from you, drow. And Yardley turns over, and you see both of his eyes are blazing yellow. Roll initiative.
Oh! God damn it!
Oh, shit!
Oh, it's a 5 on the die for an 8.
Someone could just like organize that into the chat, like if you intend to go. So still waiting on who are we waiting on? Okay, there's okay. I'm gonna safely assume that Karrde will go before Yardley because they rolled the same, but I'm guessing you have better decks than him.
That's well, I have a 1 in dex, so that's up to you.
Then you definitely.
But I'm ready to stab him in the throat. All right.
Marius, you look across the campfire and you see Azerax sort of almost stagger back in surprise. Yardley is rising to his feet, a familiar golden glow blazing from his eyes. What do you do?
Like golden glow from the eyes, reminding me of Equinox.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Azerax recognized the voice to be Equinox as well.
Right. I will call to the people, run, and then I will charge and try and separate that hammer from the head, or that head from the shoulders with my hammer.
By all means.
So that would be a. No, actually, I won't do that. That doesn't make. That's not what Marius would do. He'll actually reach out and he will make a fist, and he's going to try and cast Hold Person. So whatever this thing is, hopefully it's not actually Equinox, needs to make a DC 14 Wisdom save.
It fails.
So it's paralyzed.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would reach out and make a fist, and the Yardley, Equinox, whatever it is, would just like stop moving entirely. Not even blinking.
Absolutely. And if I'm right in saying he only gets a save against it when it comes back around to his turn next turn, correct?
The end of his turn. Yeah. All attacks against him have advantage and are automatic critical hits if they hit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you see Yardley is frozen to the spot, but the voice continues in your mind, Azerax. It's almost like you've opened that door and Equinox has stepped through it from the other side, and you're hearing his voice echo in your mind, and he just says, I see you. You are seeing this, basically the area around where Yardley and Azerax is standing is half illuminated, such as the blaze from Yardley's eyes.
All right, so I'll kind of narrate a little bit of previous to get to now. As the night began, as we began to sit down for camp, Taxes looked around at all the people and said, there's no way that I'm going to go without feeding them. So his first initiative was to go out into the woods and collect as much animal kills as he possibly could, whatever he could get. And so you see him dragging by the haunches in both hands 2 large deer that are just sort of flayed, and he's now looking over at this thing. He feels that sense. He sees that. He sees the look on Azerax's face, and he just drops the deer, standing still, and he looks to Azerax for just initiative to attack, basically. Like, Marius and Azerax, what do I got to do?
I mean, I imagine that this is all happening just incredibly quickly. Azerax is hearing the booming, ferocious voice in his mind. He can see us. I don't know if it's him or not. That's all he gets out.
It would be clear that Marius has halted him, and so hasn't made the death stroke. So I don't know. You can maybe he wants you to kill him, or maybe he just wants to hold him. It's up to you.
Right. Okay. Dude, I'm gonna. You know what? If I don't kill him,
subdue him.
I'm gonna subdue him. I'm gonna definitely chop at the legs. So, I think what you see him shove, it's almost like he takes the blade out of the deer. He takes one of the blades out of the deer and just yanks it out, shoves it in between his jowls, and gets down on his haunches. And I imagine this is probably whoever's open and out in the fields, it's probably freaking them out because they've never seen a dragon fight before, ever. It's like this serpentine attack as he just sort of sweeps through these high grasses on these meadows, and then just pulls the blade out from his teeth and just comes underneath both legs of Yardley with a blade across the back. And that is a 14 plus... Where is it? Yeah, okay, yeah, 14 plus 7, so that's 21. Yeah.
Oh, it hits.
Yeah, 21, and then I'll do... And that's a crit too, right?
Oh, did you crit?
Well, no, because it's insta crit if he's paralyzed, right?
Oh, of course. Yes, it is. Yeah. We'll put it this way. It only takes one strike. You swipe across at Yardley's legs, and your blade cuts deep, and the Equinox Azerax is Weewolf. And that is replaced with an ear-splitting shriek. As at the last second, those yellow eyes go dim. You cut Yardley to the ground, his legs giving way beneath him, collapse into the ground in a pool of blood, screaming into the night. And that is where we're going to take a moment to say hello.
You've muted yourself, Rob.
You did. You muted. Yeah.
Oh man, this is just rusty tonight. Hello.
It's been a while, you know. It's been a little bit.
It has been a little bit, hasn't it? My name's Rob. Welcome. This is Performance Check, and we're going to do some introductions. This is the Lorekeepers, Chapter 8, A Night of Silver, and we're going to make our introductions. So we're going to begin with Lorekeepers. Take it away.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Lorekeepers. I love playing in the Lorekeepers. It has been a long time, but it's like an old shoe. Nice and smell it. No, I'm just kidding. It fits and it feels good to put it on. You guys are the best. I love playing with y'all. It's amazing.
Cool, man. And Marius, Lloyd.
Hello, I am Lloyd. I'm extremely excited to be playing again. And yeah, it's just been really exciting. I really loved talking to that man who turned out to be Equinox. That was
fun. Excellent. Good to hear. Chad.
Yeah, my name is Chad, and oh my god, dude, it's been so long, but this feels so good. Lorekeepers. It feels so awesome. I'm super stoked to see where this is going. And the fact that y'all are giving taxes like moments of having to be social with people, y'all are evil. I'm just going to say that. Like, that's the worst. Putting him in social situations is a no-no.
He's a fish out of water. And finally, Barker.
Hello, everybody. My name is Barker, and I am happy as well as these guys to be back and just playing in the Lorekeepers campaign. This is pretty cool. The world kind of works in cycles in a lot of different ways, and if this were a cycle, this would be kind of like the beginning of a brand new cycle on this end of the computer screen. And this is the first game that's launching me. It's been a while since I've jumped back in the group, and this is kind of an awesome way to do it, man. Rob, I always love these games, and it's because we can do stuff like throw ideas out to the other players, and they just take them, make a witty remark, and then speak to the person through his own mind. Like, I think it's so. Lorekeepers, you have a pattern of just awesome, easy stuff to work with. So, I love this group. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, man, and it's spectacular to have you back, man. Absolutely. So I'm going to suggest we have a 2-minute break just for the moment. Really, really short break. Go grab yourself a drink, and we will be back in just a moment.
Rob, can I ask you one question before you go?
Yes, yeah, you can.
I know that your audio has been like, it's been okay. There's a couple times that it's cut out, but it's been fine. But there was one thing during the last thing that you said that I need to know what you said. What was the last thing that Equinox said before the thing was severed?
Peace, bitches.
I believe it was, yeah, it was exactly that. It was, I see you and I will find you.
Oh shit, man! That whole scene was awesome. Okay, let's go pee and then come back and play some D&D.
Sounds
Come
good.
on. Be right back, guys. What's going on, guys? I'm back. So I actually received an early birthday present. It was a while ago. It was sent to me, but just got it today because it was sent to a different address. Long story, but it's this T-shirt. Look at that, guys. Recommend whilst I'm here, D20 regalia. Like this T-shirt came from. Oh, it feels so good. Like it's made of this most amazing material. And I don't know, I'm just talking to you guys who are still watching. I don't know if you get this with T-shirts, but I cannot stand when you have a T-shirt and like the sleeve comes out like this and there's like a thing like that there. None of that. Look at that. So I'm really happy with that. I think this is called Berserk, or I'll put a thing in the chat later. But it's really good. I do recommend you check it out. It's really quite a good place to go and look at for just purely like role-playing game stuff. But I hope everyone's enjoying the game despite the audio issues, which is a bit of a pain. It's the second time in a row, and I think it might be to do with where I am at the moment. Hopefully, it will improve. Is it bearable, people in the chat? I hope it is. Not that I can really do much about it, to be honest.
G'day.
G'day, mate.
So I'm house sitting, and they have two lovely little dogs, but they're very needy dogs. And so when I'm playing this game, they're just in the side going, "Hoo, hoo," just like desperate for attention. Very bad.
That's really cool. Get them to join in. Right characters from.
I said it in the chat there earlier, but I really meant it that like I love fighting battles and such, but like more satisfying to me was like convincing that guy that Marius is okay. You know, that was like really satisfying. Loved it.
I like that. I really like that. And you did it in such a way that was like absolutely, it was so clear and logical and like profoundly put. I just loved it. And I was like, wow. So yeah, no, I love that kind of thing too, man. You're good with both in the field and of conversation.
It's yeah, lots of dialogue heavy games, I guess. You get used to it.
What do you reckon to our poor Yardley? Is all I'll say.
Dude, yeah, he's not gonna be happy about that.
Like, I had to figure out a way not to kill him. So I was like, you know what? gonna kneecap him, and maybe he won't be able to walk for a while, but at least like we got the job done.
Marius is like, get a rope, Taxes. Don't chop his legs off, for God's sake.
Fuck that, I'm gonna just. Oh, I didn't even think about a rope. Like I was just going ham on it. I didn't even think about that, man. Like I got hunting gear, man. I could have easily done that.
It might. You see, that's the thing. Like that might have profoundly cost you. Is all I will say.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, man.
Happy birthday, my brother. If you look at my screen, I wish I could say that I drew you this birthday card, but this is actually a birthday card that my coworker made for me after I told him this tale of the Battle of Talazon. And he was like, my birthday was coming up, and he was like, here you go, man. That battle was badass. I couldn't draw a kraken, so I drew a badass shark.
That's amazing.
That's stalactite city and everything.
This
is the tale of the 4 lost to left for dead quarter notes eaten by the gigantic shark
That's
at the bottom.
I absolutely love that. That's amazing. I love that they're standing upside down as well. Like, this is great. I love that. Oh man.
I knew what that was immediately. In all seriousness, Lorekeepers, when you shared that, when I looked at it, I was like, "Oh my God, that's the Battle at Talazon."
You knew it. That's awesome.
Like, I swear to God.
It's
Probably because you decided to show it to Rob. So
that was perfect, man. I love that so much. You'll have to send me a picture of that, man. I want that forever.
I will, man. I will. Absolutely, brother.
Cool, man. Okay, guys, we're back.
Yep.
We're back in. As I say, a scream rings out across the night, and Taxes, you have brought Yardley low. You've noticed that as your 2 scimitars sailed down, one basically went through the majority of his leg till he carved a sizable portion out of his calf on his other leg. Blood is pouring onto the grass. People are panicking throughout the camp because of this scream of pain and because of this instant nature of this attack. What do you all do?
Come! Marius shouts in the hopes that people will calm down. And he'll like look out and see people who are panicking most of all, and he will like go to them and like put a hand on their shoulder and try and like calm everyone down. He told them to run because he thought this would take a while, but it hasn't. So now he's trying to like regain a sense of order.
And as you're doing that, some people in a crowd have actually calmed down because of Marius's work, but they've formed an inadvertent circle around our dragonborn companion, who is just in primal, bestial, all manner of rage fashion, and people are kind of spreading out around him, letting him do his thing. And I didn't know, Taxes, if you wanted to describe what Taxes looks like, just in full-on fight mode.
So in full-on regalia, like non-rage, he looks like his eyes dilate. All the scales sort of frill behind, on his back, and all the ridges and everything sort of frill up. But he's standing there now. He sort of gets up off of his haunches, right? He's standing over Yardley screaming, and his eyes sort of go from that shark-like dilation to back to like normal. And he looks to Marius, and he looks around to you guys, and then he's seeing the companions' faces first, and then he sees everyone else now in this circle, and how they're looking at him almost like a wild animal.
And you can see from the light of the fire, like a number of these people have approached, but there is a definite and deliberate difference and distance between you and them. You are looking at the familiar sight of people that are afraid of the beast, the monster.
Right. And
Karrde's
I think
hands are out towards you like, whoa, man. Whoa, boy.
yeah, it's like I imagine Karrde, Parker, as soon as you said that, I imagine if you've seen Jurassic World where he's like
I was going to say it's like the Raptors. Yeah.
it's like the Raptors from Jurassic World. You're like, whoa. And he's like looking at you dead on. And
But this is the first time I've done something like this regarding taxes. Even Karrde has no idea what taxes could do right now.
right. And I think it's like he looks over and then he looks over at what he's done, right? And then he looks to Marius. And then he looks to Azerax. And then you just see him take his blades and chuck them into the ground, right? Like,
I did my job. That's all I need to do.
and then he goes back. And I imagine as he's starting to walk away from this, he knows he wants to help the body. He wants to help. Like, I feel like he's a compassionate enough person. He wants to help Yardley. But he knows that if he even gets close to Yardley, like, that could be a dangerous situation. They may look at that as a he's going for the kill sort of thing. And he doesn't want to do that. So he starts to walk away. And he starts to walk through, I guess, the crowding. And then you see, like, if it's allowed. And then he'll go back to the 2 killed deer that he had slain earlier and continue to drag them into the campsite and, like, throw them over near the fire, just acting like everything's normal and that, like, this is not out of character for taxes. So if you guys can't get on board with Big Man, then get the hell off this train.
And as
Good people, we must be grateful to this legendary warrior. We must be grateful for the quick action that he took. We must be extremely grateful because something terrible was about to happen here. You have been attacked every night, you have said, and it's because there was a problem, a monster, a possession in your midst. And taxes, this noble, scaled, draconic creature, has driven it out of this man. We must be grateful for that.
As Taxes is walking away, you notice that the refugees part significantly to allow him through their numbers, and the screams of Yardley have now just diminished into whimpers. And over again, he's simply saying, "You've murdered me. You've murdered me." Like, as blood continues to pour from him, and you're talking and you're backing up Taxes in this situation, but they are freaked out by this situation. They don't understand what's happening.
Azerax. Guard. Patch up the crybaby.
After
Marius
seeing the
loses shit. Sorry, just 1 second. He also loses his shit. He's like trying to calm the crowd and trying to get them on board with Taxes being a good, helpful person, and he calls him a crybaby. Marius gives you this look of like, what the fuck are you doing? I am trying. Sorry, Lucas, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I imagine that Azerax was hearing the voice of his nemesis spitting a curse saying that he's going to find us, and seeing the blood oozing from Yardley's wounds all happened in a minute. I imagine his jaw was on the ground, just dumbstruck with what was happening. So Tax's words, he snaps back to it. He runs over to Yardley, and I imagine that he cuts off the neck part of his apron and pulls his apron off, and all of a sudden he sees that glint of the silver mirror for the briefest moment. He backs up, and he grabs the apron and he rolls it up. He wraps it up as tight as possible, and perhaps to Karrde, who's probably the only other person who's close, I don't know, he could see through the mirror. There are tales of certain spells can be blocked by a thin amount of lead. Maybe there's some on the apron. I don't know what to do.
It's at this point you realize your speech has gone in one ear and out the other to Karrde. He's staring at this person that you're patching up, and his hand is white-knuckled around his sword, his father's great sword. And he is staring at this guy's throat. And he looks to Yardley and he moves forward and he says, "Now why we gotta patch him up so quick?"
Azerax looks at Karrde, sees that determination in his eyes. We can use this. He turns down to Yardley. I don't know if I can. He's so much bigger than me. Tell him you're sorry. Tell him what you were doing or he will cut you. He will finish what the Dragonborn started.
And Yardley, his eyes, he looks to you with fright. And he looks over to Karrde, who's sort of standing over him, fierce intent glinting in his gaze. And he says, I don't know. I don't know.
Tell him something. How did you communicate with him?
The greatsword is on his throat.
And he looks at you, and you can see pure terror and pure truth in his eyes as he says, "He was in my mind." And then he dies.
I imagine silence. Looking down at this man's face, he looks up to Karrde with a greatsword at his throat. He looks down at this man, a rictus of fear, a look of terror that will haunt Azerax until the end of his days. He looks at his hands, they're covered in blood. Perhaps not from him, but perhaps from the Lorekeepers. And he thinks for a moment, maybe the people of Freedom's Salvation have reason to fear the Lorekeepers.
And as that thought passes through Azerax's mind, you hear the small tang of steel on earth as the great sword is thrown to the ground, and the heavy footsteps as Karrde stomps away to some darker part of a forest or some hill that he can take a walk behind and be by himself for a bit.
And I'm going to say, as Azerax is sort of stood there dumbfounded, Taxes has gone to a solitary position, as has Karrde. Marius, one who knows of medicine, on closer inspection, you can see that Taxes' blade caught the vital artery. Yardley had moments, and there wasn't anything you could really do. And I'm going to say that the night passes restlessly. The sun rises. Karrde, you are on the verge of a copse of trees. You're not far from where the refugees are. Maybe it's a thought of duty, wanting to remain close to your friends, but just have enough space where you can just be alone for a while. And Lyra sort of walks up to you. You heard her coming.
She hears the sound of a knife on wood, and she will see that he's whittling as she approaches, and he says, "Good harvest."
And she barely manages a smile this time. And she says, Geldari, and she's about to answer in the same way, and she just stops and just says, Karrde, who have you brought to us?
Which one you mean?
She looks to you and says,
I didn't hear that, Rob. What was that?
He said, she says, Yardley was a prick. He was no good. He was selfish. But he wasn't evil. He didn't deserve that. You know who I mean.
Well, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like he saved your whole group on the second to last day before we arrive at our destination. It looks to me like we all owe everything to taxes.
She is looking at you, and you can see in her eyes that she's desperately trying to believe your words. And your mind goes back to when you were telling her stories. You would tell her the stories that you'd heard from the Grimoire Muse. Damodran's the Lord's Blade, Valdane the Lightning Child. Wrapped word, and she's trying to get there, but she can't, and she just shakes her head and says, it could be true what you're saying, but I saw your friend. If you think that saved us, then fine, but I'm not going to believe it.
He kind of takes a long pause, stops his whittling away at whatever it is, and looks to her sternly and says, what would you rather? He says, some sort of mole in the middle of your organization here, or a little bit of blood on your hands.
And
on our hands, sorry, our hands.
Yeah, and she looks down, and you can see the stress of the situation she's been in for so long is like just bubbling behind her expression. And she says that may be right. And maybe more blood will be spilled, and more and more and more, until we're drowning in it, Karrde. I appreciate what you've done, and I appreciate your trying to help. We need to get home, and we need to get home today. If we press on, we can make it by nightfall.
He doesn't say a word. He walks away from her, thinking about his friend Taxes and his friend Azerax and his friend Marius and himself, who just stopped this issue from blossoming. He walks right past her, and his shoulder collides with hers on his way out, and but no word spoken, nothing. He walks away,
and you can feel her eyes on you as you walk away. She doesn't rejoin you. She walks down the same direction, really, but sort of keeping a distance from you, and starts telling people around this makeshift camp to get ready. They're moving in 5 minutes, and is making busy preparations. Azerax, what are you doing now that this is daylight?
I imagine that last night's trance was particularly harrowing for Azerax. As is the tradition of his people, he needs to rest for about half the time as the humans that he travels with do. So I imagine that he has a fair amount of time to think to himself. And I would imagine that perhaps as Karrde is finishing his conversation, he would see Azerax seated with Marius and Taxes, perhaps having a small conversation, and he would beckon him forth so that the four of us may speak. And I would imagine that, given the events of last night, that probably people are giving us a pretty wide berth. And Azerax would like to speak with all of us without any of the others around. And as Karrde approaches, he would turn to each of his friends. His look is somber, but his jaw is steeled. And he says, I think we should tell these people. I think we should tell these people everything. Now, there may be another piece of shit rat in their midst, but the fact of the matter is that Equinox and Advent have been one step ahead of us the whole time. Look at them. I imagine that, we're watching these people get all of their stuff ready, pack their stuff up, and it's just a motley crew, people from every walk of life. If these people survive, and they will, or at least most of them will, because we are with them, they're going to go on about their lives. They're going to spread. Look, this man probably works as a bowyer, right? This man obviously has never worked a day in his life. He's probably a pickpocket. They're going to go to the various places in their life. If we let them go and hear the tale about how we slayed one of them for no reason on this road, it does not bode well for us. And I don't really give a fuck about myself anymore. I'm sick of seeing shit like this. People destitute, thrown out with nothing, like fucking garbage. I say we tell them who we are. I mean, what's he gonna do? He fucking knows where we are anyway. The Silver Mirror, he might be able to keep tabs on us right now. I feel like the only hope we have is to spread the word of the Lorekeepers. To do that, we have to convince these people that the reason we did this. I don't know if we'll be able to, but I think we have to try.
And how exactly do you think we do that, huh? Look, Azerax, you and I, we have a very common bond because we're outsiders on the top side of the world. But, look, I didn't mean to kill him. Y'all know that. I didn't mean to. But those people out there, those humans, all they see me as is a dog, or an animal, someone that isn't like you, isn't like Marius or Karrde. I'm your pet at best. So, I don't exactly know where to go from here.
And he gets angry and he gets frustrated. And you can see he like, and he just spits a large bolster of flame, I guess, into this fire pit that we're probably around. And it just shoots up into the air. And he'll take one of his blades, and he just hacks a chunk of wood off with one of the blades and chucks it into the fire.
How do you expect me to get through to them?
Lower your voice.
What am I supposed to do?
Tell them the truth. Tell them you saw a glow from this man's eyes, the same glow that glows from Equinox. Tell him the voice of the nemesis of this land boomed through our heads. We struck.
And he looks to each of you. And you think they're going to believe that?
Hell, did you see the way they looked at me? They don't even believe I exist until yesterday. So, I'm sorry if I'm starting to lack a little faith.
You need to empathize, Taxes. These people have seen us come into their camp and then murder a man. That is what they have seen, because that's what they want to see.
Empathize? You want me to empathize, Marius? How about being the only one, well, outside of Weaver, that you've seen of your own kind? God, I don't know how long.
Man, I'm the only one of my kind. You're at the top of the food chain, Taxes. Karrde is just kind of glaring at you, and he says, and which is it? Did you not mean to? Or was it like you said after you killed him? And he says, I was just doing my job. He looks you right in the eye, Taxes, and he says, all I can think of when I look at you, Taxes, is, can we blame him? Can you blame him?
And at that, Taxes shuts up. You've put a muzzle on his anger, but he stalks around outside of the campfire a little bit. He stalks around and just sort of broods in that anger and frustration. And then you sort of see him coil up and coil around like a muzzled dog, and just sort of curls around into a ball and sits there cross-legged, just looking at the three of you.
Well, they're not going to listen to me. So, look, I'll stand there. I'll be as honest as I can be if I have to open my mouth. But, yeah, right now, I don't exactly know what to say.
And as you say that, Taxes, it's becoming clear to you all that if you are going to do as Azerax has advised and tell the truth, it'll have to be when you arrive at Ganon for the caravan begins to move. And it's almost like the bunch of you are tolerated of your presence, and you get the feeling the only reason you are tolerated is because no one will stand up to you. And the journey goes in silence. I imagine you all... Oh, go ahead.
Marius will be doing his best to like smooth over as much as possible. It's like one of the things he's good at is getting people to believe in him. He's got good with people, and he would kind of go around and among the people and just kind of tell stories about Taxes and how he has saved all of their lives many times, and how it was clear that the light was shining from the eyes and it was equinox and you had to do it, but probably falls on deaf ears.
Yeah, and it is... Some people definitely listen to you, Marius. You have a way with words. And there's no denying that the four of you are impressive. But there's just so much weighing on their minds right now. And yeah, it's difficult for them. And as night begins to fall, as you've traveled for the entirety of the day, a feeling in all of you, like something dangerous, could be approaching at any moment, but you see nothing. The only thing of note is as the sun is dipping beneath the horizon, you see a familiar sight. Upon a crag, upon the side of it, the gate of Gael, and about 10 leagues from it lies a settlement that you hadn't been to before, but one you had noticed on your journey, and it is Kilgannon. It's a town, but it's barely a town. No more than 30 buildings. It is more of a large village. You see a wooden stockade that surrounds it with a rudimentary gate on the west and eastern side of the settlement. Torches and fires are beginning to spring up. And Lyra quickens her pace to ensure that she arrives first. She gives a shout to the gates, and a young boy, no older than 14 years old, the hail and cries out to allow the gates to be opened. Karrde, you would have returned to Kilgannon every now and then. The most of your time throughout your young adult and then adult years have been in the wilderness until you met these guys, really.
Yeah, I imagine this might have even been a place, there might be a few little outpost locations or borderland towns or places that I'd be able to stop into. And I would imagine that I would visit Kilgannon the least, if possible, of all of them. But I know it, but I purposefully don't check in as often.
Yeah. And no matter what you would have thought of this town, you could have never imagined that these would be the circumstances in which you return to it. And an almost ecstatic wave of relief washes over the 100-strong band of refugees just at the sight of a simple gate and stockade they haven't had in a long time, a defensible location, safety. And Lyra rides in through into the town, and you can see it's sort of built in a sort of circle fashion. All the houses and buildings surround a central sort of square where the market would be set up in the morning. However, it's nightfall. It's all been set away, so it's just a clear, open space, and that is where everyone is settling. And Lyra approaches, and Elle walks out to greet her. Can't you recognize this to be Lyra's father? You can only imagine to be the leader of such a town. And they are exchanging hushed and frank words.
Karrde will slowly kind of sidestep towards them while kind of looking to Marius, Azerax, the other three, his other companions, and then nodding towards a nearby tavern that must be near the entrance, a place where we can grab a few seats just in case. But he'll sidestep a little bit closer to Lyra and her father to see if he can get within earshot.
You can, and you remember Lyra's father. His name is Marik. And you can overhear the conversation, and he's saying things like, "It's been too long since I've seen you. I was so worried." And she's like, "It's fine, Father. The journey has been long, but we made it." And he says, "These people, they are all over the capital." And she says, "Yes." "Well," and she looks around and she notices that you're standing there. And she says, "Father, you remember Karrde?" And Marik looks over at you. And recognition dawns across his face, and his expression darkens. And he says nothing but looks at you, Karrde.
I like to think that Karrde begins to say "good harvest," but she interrupts him or something, like right at the beginning when he's going to say it.
So yeah, she interrupts you say?
Yeah, like he goes for his usual line of "good harvest" to just fill in space, and I imagine that she would interrupt him.
She says, "Father, we have been followed, but all that accompany us, they said they could help. Though
And we did." He speaks up. "We did help."
it is true," she says.
He stands up a little bit taller and smiles a little bit more broadly to hear her say that.
And she looks over at you and then back to her father. She says, "There are more pressing things at hand, Father. These fanatics we've been hearing about, it's true. The city fell nearly 5 weeks ago, and it took us that long to get here. They are causing havoc across this realm. We have every right to believe that they are following us. I did not want to draw them here, but we could go. The dwarves refused us. We had to head south. This is the only place." And she basically breaks down. All of that stress, all of that emotion just gives out. And her father holds her, and he looks at you, Karrde, over her shoulder. And he says, "I would not have had you go anywhere else, Lyra. You're all welcome here." And he looks over past you, Karrde, and he sees, and his eyes widen, as I'm afraid you're getting used to Taxes at the sight of a dragonborn. The familiar narrowing of suspicion at the sight of a drow, and the slight awe that comes from the sort of the imperious Marius that stands with poise always. And he's almost like he's waiting for you to sort of like introduce yourselves now that she's brought his attention to you.
You're in charge here?
I am.
We need to speak somewhere quietly.
And he looks around and he says, "Very well." And he says, and he shouts to some of the you see, I'd say guards, but unfortunately these Marius, you're a military man, and you know when people are green. Most of the people that wear militia garb and rudimentary basic armor either look to be young boys or old men. In order to these guards to basically start helping the people that have just arrived, the refugees. And he gives a nod of his head, and he begins walking towards a building, sort of with a thatched roof, looks to be like a mustering hall. As you were all walking through the town, you were seeing familiar sights. Karrde, you were seeing there is a place of prayer to the old gods. There is the graveyard that stretches out from behind it as well. In fact, it's always struck you as peculiar that a quarter of the town's perimeter is taken up with the graveyard. And you're walking past familiar places. You're seeing a smith, you're seeing a Fletcher's, and then eventually you are inside. Marik, this old man, he has a grey beard, and he has a chain about his neck that denotes that he is chief of some kind. And he looks to you as the door closes. He says, I don't know who you are, but if you've helped my daughter and those people, then you have my ear. What do you wish to speak of?
It's likely that the town will be attacked over the next few days. I would begin making preparations immediately. If I was you, I would put that in my hands.
Your hands? Forgive me, sir, but I do not know you from anyone.
I'm a military man, seemingly one of the only military men in this town. You have boys and old men holding spears. It's not going to hold.
And you know me. I'll vouch for him.
And he looks to you and he says, and he meets your gaze, Karrde, and he says, yes, I know you. And then he looks back to you, Marius, and he says, you're right. You're right. Our main fighting men, the majority of them, went north to the capital. When the fire had not been ceased, we'd received summons. We sent what we could. There is only a skeleton here. And you're right. They are boys and old men. What preparations would you recommend? Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Marius.
Marius.
I took a brief look around as I entered in here. There are many things that need fixing, many things that need reinforcing. There are too many buildings for the amount of people that live here. We need to start breaking those apart and reinforcing the walls. First of all, we need to get the people living in a central location. We need to have watches. He just rattles off this list of things that are like second nature to Marius. We need to get the people training. We need the boys and the men and the girls and the women, everyone who can hold a spear or a knife to be training until they arrive.
And he looks at you, and though he's old, you can see he is keenly and easily remembering all of the many tasks that you are saying that need to be done. This guy isn't a military man, but he's a leader of sorts. And he is wise to know what he knows and what he doesn't. And he says, we shall see what we can do. But you must be exhausted.
Seeing what you can do is not enough. It's not enough. Advent are coming here. We know this. They're going to find us and they're going to attack, and we need to make every preparation. There can be no rest.
But the people, they've been... And then he stops.
The people are tired, but better tired than dead.
He bows his head and you speak many truths, Marius.
It's not my intent to come across
to
bossy or intimidating, but we're low on time and there's no room for pleasantries. So I apologize if I have been brusque, but it's necessary.
And he nods. At this point, I want us to have a chat, because this is where this is going to differ slightly from other sessions we've done before. Because I want the four of you to come up with the best way to defend Ganon from the forces of Advent. You do not know exactly how long it will take Advent to reach you, but I'm going to say as Karrde, as a keen wanderer of these lands, will know that you weren't being directly followed. Minimum 2 days is what you have.
2 days until
And
they reach the town?
so they could potentially reach Ganon to make an attack, correct?
Yeah, assuming that they're on the march, which we do. Okay.
So, now the night, it's late at this point, and Marik was correct in saying that, you know, the people are exhausted. They are, and you are too. You can feel your muscles are aching. You feel a strain behind your eyes. And I'm going to say we're going to jump to Azerax first. What is Azerax's first instinct when such a task is at hand?
So, as we're having this conversation, I think Azerax would say sort of blurt out something incredibly strange. He would say, "Wake the potter. I'm going to need access to his shop." And perhaps seeing the puzzled look on the expression of his allies, he'll say, I want to investigate the mirror, the whatever artifact that Equinox was using to speak with the aproned man. And it occurs to me that, well, I don't know what sort of spell he is using to do this, but I know that there are many spells of the divination sphere of magic that are blocked by lead. I also happen to know that an ingredient in many pieces of pottery is lead as well. So I intend to make a little ritual area. I will have a small vessel to throw the mirror in and close it if he tries to invade my mind. But I think we need to figure out how he's able to contact people. As far as the military affairs, I will leave that up to you. I can weave an illusion to do a little bit of trickery, of course. And I suppose the Advent soldiers, the Silver Guard, are in heavy armor. If we can do something to I don't know, change the battlefield, that they sink into some mud, or I don't know. I leave that to you warriors to figure that out.
And Marik looks to you and says, I will give word for that to be done. You'll have everything that you need. And yeah, he looks at the rest of you.
What do you say, Karrde? I know you know these lands, you know this area.
You see that Karrde's eyes are on the corner of the town where the cemetery will be. Is that kind of like the whole corner is taken up by this graveyard?
Yeah, so you see that there is an old place of worship, a very, very, very old church. In fact, it was the first thing historically to actually have been built on this location, and then Ganon was then built around it. So yeah, the graveyard does take up like a quarter of this place in one corner.
Can there be large trees in the graveyard? Can that be a thing?
Oh yeah, there's like yew trees and sycamores. Yeah, absolutely.
You take 100 generals and you line them up and you ask them how they take this town, and every single one of them is going to say through that graveyard. And he points towards it and he says, we need some sort of surprise, and there's trees. And he looks towards Taxes and he says, listen, ain't nobody going to stand here in front of you and say you ain't good at what you do. You want to do it?
Tree line. He looks at you, Karrde. You asking me to hunt?
I'm saying they're going to sneak into this place in the middle of the night. And, well, I guess, yeah. I'm asking you if you want to hunt.
Done.
He looks to the man.
They're gonna send. They're gonna send quite a few men, probably through that graveyard. He's right. I'm gonna need a couple of able bodies. Whoever you got. But people who can be quiet. People who I can trust. I'm not doing this alone, though.
I'm sure we can rally our best. There are still some of us with the strength to swing a sword effectively. And like you can tell, like he's like everyone else, worried about the fact that there's a giant dragonborn talking to him, but given the circumstances, he bites it and like he clearly sees as more important things to be discussing. He says, "You will have what you ask for."
Good. And then he basically looks to you,
But
Marik, one more time. He says,
Go to your blacksmith. I want traps made. Your boys and I will dig out holes in that forest. I'll make sure that those silver sons of bitches have graves to dig themselves out of.
and yeah, he nods and he says, "We have many traps already that we have used for hunting. Perhaps they'll be of some use to you, but the order can be given. You will have what you ask for in as quick a time as we can manage."
Then I guess Marius and I will take half of your forces. He looks to Marius. Maybe some horses, however many we need, plus, and he looks to taxes, 2 for him to eat, sarcastically. And then he looks back and says, and then the other half can stay over here in the graveyard, snap up to right when they least expect it.
And doesn't know whether you're serious about the horse comment, but he doesn't rise to it. And he says, and he looks over to Marius and he says, "What else can we do?"
Well, we need to break down all the buildings that we don't need. The ones people aren't living in or those people are currently living in. We need to make this town smaller if we can. Break down those buildings and build a secondary inner wall and reinforce the outer wall because it's flimsy. We have to destroy all the stairs in the buildings so that they can't get up there. And we make bridges between the roofs so we can run around up there and fire down arrows and bolts and throw rocks. We need to melt down every pot and pan we can to make spear tips and arrowheads. We got to run drills mercilessly with these green boys and old men and little girls and old women non-stop until they pass out. We have to show them how to use a spear together, how to use bows and crossbows. That's what I think we should do.
Oh, he says, nodding. So perhaps we could divide the people we have. Those perhaps not able to fight could begin work and making munitions and making the changes to the perimeter that you make and destroying stairs and building bridges. And the rest, you are a military man, you say. Will you lead these drills?
Of course.
Very well. So let me recap. You intend to bottleneck their forces through the eastern gate, through the graveyard, and rain down arrows from above, traps surrounding them, and then what?
If they break through that first bit, we'll have a secondary wall to fall back to. But we will also have bridges between the buildings so that they will be running through the streets where we can throw down whatever we want on them. If they manage to get to that secondary gate, we can run through over the bridges that we have built, destroying them behind us as we go. And once we're in that secondary gate, we can get the people into a spear formation and hopefully hold the line.
And he nods. This is going to be a difficult task, but it is one we must have completed. Your orders will be followed, I can promise you. Thank you. I'm going to select each one of you, and we're going to talk about how each of you are preparing and how each of you are going about your preparations. And we're going to begin with Azerax.
So I imagine that Azerax, after informing his allies what he has in mind to investigate this strange silver mirror, this instrument of Equinox, I imagine that he's set up in the potter's shop. It's nighttime, and I imagine that he's out back and he's made a makeshift magical circle with candles burning on various points of the star that he's etched in the either etched into the ground, or perhaps he's used colored sand from or the various colored powders that the potter would use. He has I imagine like an urn in the center, glazed with a lead glaze, and a plate that he's ready to plop on top of it in case this motherfucker tries to reach through and take over my mind. Not sure if that's going to work or not, but as he does so, he's going to cast Detect Magic as a ritual to try to see if he can glean the inner workings of this thing. And as he does so, I imagine he still has it wrapped up in the apron of the dead man whose name I always forget. And he slowly unrolls it to see that glint of silver in front of him.
And I would like you, please, Azerax, to give me a Arcana
All right, you got it.
check. Skill.
So that's a 7 on the die, but I have a +7 for a 14.
That's perfect because the DC is about 5. And do you know why it's that low?
Probably not good reasons.
After it's almost like you're going into your automatic, I'm going to solve a really difficult problem. And the answer is morbidly simple. There is no trace or element of magic on that mirror.
Son of a bitch. He looks around at the tallow melting in the center. I imagine that the potter and his family have been carted off to sleep in someone else's basement at this point. He scratches his head and thinks back to what he saw. To think back of anything as far as how is it possible? Some sort of I don't know. Can he think of any way that this mirror was used? Does it seem like it needed?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
There is something that suddenly just leaps into your mind. And it's how you spotted the mirror in his hand in the first place. He was sat by the fire, and it was glinting brightly. And potentially could have been a simple mirror signal.
Oh, damn. He just shakes his head.
However, what's more troubling is that you don't understand. You were not aware that Equinox had the ability to see through other people's eyes. This is something that you've not encountered with him. You know that he is a being of insurmountable power, but you didn't believe he was capable of this. And the only experience of anything that you've had in that manner to do with anything magical is perhaps from a spell book from the Third Age, the Third Era, where an individual could look into the mind of someone and rob them of their own will and make them a dominated thrall in which to be a vessel.
Absolutely. And as Azerax ponders these old dusty tomes that he probably read a long time ago, in some backwoods corridor of the Magisterium, I imagine that he will take this opportunity to study his own spell book and take a little bit of a respite, for I don't think that he's had a moment alone in some time. So I think that he will take the rest of his rest here and try to come up with some other plan.
Perfect. And as you're resting, you are able to muse over what illusions and what you might be able to have erupt around the battlefield to potentially sway the favor in your way. But that's obviously down to you, man, like what spells you want to use and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And as he's thinking about that, I imagine he, when Azerax is thinking about illusions, it's sort of like a phantasmagoria of shifting images in his brain. He's really smart and his brain works really fast. And the synapses fire, and he thinks about the book, and he thinks about the telling, and he thinks about the gate of Gael. And he grabs Grim and he opens it up. And he says, Grim, are you there?
As ever.
The gate of Gael is right up on that hill, right? There is some sort of a nexus from this realm to the telling itself, or unless I'm an idiot. Is that right?
Absolutely, you're right, Azerax. It is. Yeah, the Elandrin passed through. So the story goes, when they left this material plane. The connection is weak, though. That's why we couldn't get to the Methanium through it. We had to find it the old-fashioned way. But there is still a link. I was able to interact with it before.
How do we strengthen it? With the strength of the telling of tales, correct?
This would need time and focus on my part, but it can be done. I need to be near it, though.
Okay.
What do you want? What do you?
I don't know. We need a way to stop that fucking I-beam. That's what we need. I mean, my 3 companions are the best warriors I've ever seen, but in the face of that golden ray of death, we have no hope against it. In the Second Age, I remember there was wizards would study it was a very simple incantation to make a shimmering disc in front of them. It was a way to reflect the gaze of a creature like a basilisk or a cockatrice, a medusa, that had a stunning visage that would turn you to stone or else. There was an enchantment that was able to reflect that back upon the caster. Do you know any tales of that, Grim? Maybe that would help us.
He strains, well, you can't obviously tell he's a book, but he's obviously thinking very, very hard. And then a sly voice comes from the grimoire. And he says, I think I know just the thing. And it's there. We're going to take a very short break. And
break time.
Yeah. So we'll take just 5 minutes, very, very quick, and we will be right back.
All right, sounds
good.
Just for a little bit. You know you have good players when they're not afraid to start arguing with each other in a really dramatic, intense way. They've all had their disagreements in the past. But as a GM, I felt like I had just sown a seed. I sat back and watched as they argued. Which was tense. Really tense. And I didn't see it coming, but it was great.
The best possible scenario as a DM is that you make yourself redundant, right? Like you just get to sit back and watch, which is the best possible situation for a GM, I think.
That whole scene with Yardley, like, and then people realizing that Taxes had killed him, and it was, and then Karrde was, oh man, just that whole bit was just fucking great. I loved it.
That was intense. It was awesome.
Like, and yeah, you're right, Lo, because I was just like, this isn't me. I just get to sit back and watch you guys do what you do best, and it was just great.
Yep. That's always the hope. When I run games as well, it happens in Against the Shadow a lot. I can just be like, yep, you guys take care of the next 20 minutes, and I'll just sit here and munch on my popcorn. It's great. Yeah.
I felt like rude for interrupting. I was like, you guys, oh man, there's some magic going on there. So yeah, this session's going really, really radically different from how I envisioned it, which is always a good thing. I always like being surprised by you guys. Like, that's the thing. So we're all back. I'm gonna cease camera to preserve the audio. So preparations are continuing to be made throughout the night. Taxes. What is it that you're doing to make ready for the imminent attack?
All right. So Taxes has taken his motley crew of what can only be assumed as hunters. Some of them are probably fur trappers. Some of them are probably farmers of this village.
All right, you lot. Here's the deal. Many of you will not like me. Hell, many of you probably want to kill me. And that's all right. I don't like you. You don't like me. But the deal is there's someone out there that wants to kill you and your families. I don't mince that lightly. If you want to protect that, you have to protect yourselves.
So he starts mounting people up into segments. The farmers and the harvesters, he begins to have them dig out a trench throughout the, almost like, yeah, just a little trench, like a barracks, something that you would use in a war to shoot from. And then he's just like, he teaches them first how to do it. He's like,
dig this far down so you can walk below. Cover up the tops to make sure that they think they can walk over it. Then,
and he looks to the archers. He's like,
get underneath the trenches, fire from below.
Then he looks to the trappers.
You, coming with me.
And he goes around basically this forested area around the graveyard, and he starts to just lay down traps.
You know how to hunt. I'm not going to teach you. If you don't, get out of my way. Lay down the traps. Cover them up. Whatever you got. Make it look as good as possible. When they're locked in, I want to make sure that these things snap metal.
And he grabs a hold of an old piece of armor, probably just a leg breastplate, or a leg shin guard, and he thrusts it into one of the bear traps, and it just snaps onto snaps through the leg pretty clean. He says, "Okay,
that'll do. Mount these up around every headstone. As much as you can. Bury them deep into those mounds. They won't even know where they're stepping. Now, once they're
once they're locked, and he looks to the remaining like archers and remaining soldiers that he has in his little hunting battalion. You were chosen because you were supposedly stealthy. You're supposedly hunters. You're supposedly quiet. You will go up into the trees. You will hide in the brush. You will do whatever you need to do. And finally, you will get dirty. I want every one of you covered in mud, sap, dirt, grime. Camouflage yourselves. They will not see you coming, but we will. As soon as they mount that ridge in their silver lines, I want every single one of those arrows launched at their battalions. Do you understand me? And he sort of growls that last line. Do you understand me? And I almost want to say that last bit of that platoon looks at him like just knee shaking, white knuckle fear. Yes, sir. Yes. I will. Good. I will take you, and you, and he kind of grabs 3 people, out of the platoon. You're with me.
And although they're disturbed by the presence of this dragon man, they comply. And you're surprised, Taxes, to note that the people that have been assigned to you are competently going about their jobs. Some of them, the younger ones, the young boys and girls that grip bows nervously, a bit more hesitant, but you're able to wrangle them into shape. Karrde, you are alongside Taxes, as I believe it is both of you who will be spearheading this particular amount of preparation.
Yes, he hears the words, "Do you understand me?" rings through the cemetery and this forested area. And for a moment, Karrde looks to Taxes and thinks, how if he were just in a building, one of the other rooms, one of these indoor locations around here, he could still have heard Taxes' voice. It was so loud, but he wouldn't have been able to tell he was a dragonborn. That this motivational speech that Taxes has just delivered to the people of a town that he had never even visited, that maybe for a moment he thought, he might be right, he might have a point, and Taxes knows that he already talked to Karrde earlier, so Karrde informed him that he's going to be in the trees with that little with that stealthy company when the enemy travels through the cemetery. But for a moment, Taxes looks over and Karrde is gone, and you hear kind of the footsteps on creaking wooden floorboards. You hear a door open, and the interior handle kind of gently slams against the hardwood wall, and you see an empty room. He looks into the corner where the fire used to be lit, and all he sees is a chair tipped over on its side. He remembers the beautiful upholstery that his mother had created, had used to create this chair. But now he sees something moth-eaten and lost to time. Next to it is a wooden table, tipped over as well. One of the legs broken off, lays about a meter away. He walks over to it and he puts his fingers in the wooden grooves etched into the oak. Karrde. He picks up the chair, sits in it for a moment, and remembers that he chose this life. He always knew from the beginning, from the orphanage on, he knew that his life was become a lorekeeper or live a life from the bottom. Live a life of pain in the gutters of the world. But he knew a long time ago that there were different kinds of pain. And this kind of pain, he learned quickly, wasn't something that would end up slowing him down. But it's the kind of pain that the moth feels when it's burrowing its way out of the cocoon. He stands up, tips the chair back over, and walks outside and climbs in a tree. Unless the attack won't happen tonight, then he will prepare to climb into a tree so as to be as comfortable as possible when the attack comes, of course.
I know you've already had one, but I want you to take a point of inspiration for that. Okay.
Thanks, man.
Whew. Goodness me. The remains of the home of your father and your mother. Marius, I'm guessing you're hard at work.
Closer! Marius shouts as he's like pacing up and down in front of the assembled wimps before him. You need to be shoulder to shoulder. First line, hold the spear as normal. Second line, hold it over their shoulders. Third line, over your head. The enemy has to face a wall of spear tips. And when you thrust, you don't thrust for the enemy, you thrust through him. You have to push it all the way through, or else he won't die. Because he won't hesitate to kill you. He can show no mercy. It is important, vital, that none of you break. You are one unit. There can be no retreat because there's nowhere to fucking go. And then we like switch, and there's all these boys and men kind of like fighting. And he's like, no, you idiot. You don't swing for my sword. You swing for my head. What's the point in swinging for this weapon? That's not going to hurt me. You're trying to kill me. You're not trying to play heroes here. You're trying to kill. End the lives of your enemy because he will end yours. And then a line of archers. He says, it doesn't matter how fast that you're firing. If you miss, you have to take your time and breathe. Do not panic. Take your time. Breathe. Pull and release. Get ready. And Marius like clamps down the front of his helmet, and he's got a shield in front of him, and he starts running towards the archers. Breathe. Aim. Fire. Take me down. All around the ground around him. Not a single arrow comes anywhere near him. He's like 30 feet away from them now, and he can hear them, and they're like shaking, and people are dropping arrows, and just one or two ting off the armor, and eventually he gets to the line, and he just like pushes a bunch of them to the side. Pathetic again, and he runs to the end, and then he's at the blacksmith, and there's people trying to make weapons, and he says, "Deron, let me see that blade." Okay, it better be sharp enough for me to shave with. And he like picks it up, and there's just like nothing, and he's like running it across his unprotected hand, and he's doing this. What do you think this is going to do to the enemy? Slaps him in the side of the head. Not good enough. Pick it up. Do it again. That's what Marius is doing.
And that's amazing.
Awesome.
Amazing. Absolutely incredible. Marius, your drills, they seem endless to those who undergo them. But they undergo them knowing that it is you and your teachings and your advice that might just get them through. And it is that and that alone that keeps them sharp. It keeps them listening to you. A day has gone by. And night begins to fall once more. Azerax, you're still hard at work, poring over your spell book, looking over notes that you've made from different eras of the world you live in today. Anything from the cycles of the 3 moons to the lost realms across the sea. And you hear Grimm's voice once again. He's been focusing. And he's been able to reach out with a lot of concentration across the flatlands and up to the crag where the Gate of Guile stands. And he's been concentrating and he's been quiet for a long time. But all of a sudden he starts speaking to you and he says, Azerax,
Yeah,
do you mind?
Yes.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
You can ask whatever you want. Whether or not I answer is another story.
Of course. I think of you as a friend. I know I'm only a book, but
Absolutely.
I've,
I mean, you know some about me. I don't have a lot of friends, but I'm glad to count you as one of them.
Oh, well, I didn't want to say that you didn't have any friends, Azerax, but now you're being obvious. No, I've been thinking. I've been thinking a lot, and like I say, I'm only a book, but I've been thinking about happiness. When you found me, I was blank. I used to have many stories within my pages, and Stafflin saw to that to keep me safe, to keep this world safe. What he did was for the good of the Lorekeepers, for the good of the people of Farwyde, for the good of the 9 Kingdoms. And I think, I don't really remember much about that time, but I think I'm happier now than what I was. And I wanted to know, Azerax, what is your definition of happiness? Happy?
That is a question you should probably ask a priest and not a wizard. My definition of happiness? I don't know. I know it when I feel it. There's an indescribable sense of well-being. A sense that you are exactly where you are supposed to be at the moment. A tickle in your belly that makes it so you can't help but laugh. I don't know.
I think I know what you mean. It's funny. I know a lot about stories. I know a lot about legends. And they always say there's a happily ever after. So the oldest tales go anyway. But I don't think that exists. I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think happiness is a clear horizon. I think it's an open road with nothing to worry about. It's only creative and not destructive. And living in times like these, it's difficult to see beyond the destructive. Do you see past it?
It depends on the moment, my friend. I remember reading an old tome of a crazy old monk who lived on a hill. Didn't see anyone for years and years and years and just wrote and wrote and wrote. He said, happiness is in every moment, right? One moment you can be happy. You just have to decide to be happy. If you decide to be happy, you're happy. If you let all of the bullshit of the world overtake you, then you're not happy.
And this, Azerax, is why I would always ask questions of a wizard and not a priest. And he continues focusing upon the gate of Gar-El. Marius, you're on watch that night. You stride and you're looking upon the secondary wall that's almost completed. You think to yourself that maybe this is record time for such a construction to be made, but with the right application of discipline and time management, you have been almost successful. And you're walking along the battlements of the outer wall, looking at the work that you've directed into creation. And I'd like you to make a perception check.
It's 17.
Marius, you see a glint, like a flicker of light in the horizon, on the horizon.
Okay. Shit. Are his thoughts. He hasn't slept. He's so tired from just drilling people non-stop. Right. He can I hear anything?
It's interesting because the moment you see it, it's gone. All you can hear is the quiet in the night air.
Like a glint of metal? Is that what it was?
Seemingly something reflective, yes.
Well, it's not a bear. Okay, well, he would have to investigate. Doesn't want to wake everyone from their very much needed slumber. But they're exhausted and they need the rest if they're going to be fighting. So what he will do, you said it was on the horizon, so like quite a bit away, right?
A fair while away. You reckon maybe half a mile out.
Right, that's not far enough. Now, can we communicate with each other at all times because of Grim?
You can always try.
Yeah. He'll kind of shut his eyes and he'll squeeze them tight, and he will say, "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!"
And it's weird. This has never happened before, but somehow Marius's mind is echoing in all of your minds. His voice, sorry.
Karrde wakes up to a face full of grass as he fell asleep in the cemetery. He looks up and sees Sir Patrick Neely with 2 years and a hyphen between them, much loved, and he hears "wake up, wake up, wake up" inside of his head, and he recognizes that voice has to be Marius's, and he gets up and starts running, looking for Taxes to wake him up.
There's something I saw on the horizon. I'm going to go and check it out. If I contact you again, wake everyone up. Ring the alarm.
What did you see?
A glint of metal.
Like the mirror?
Like the mirror. Marius is going to begin like chanting to himself, and he's going to begin like moving. And he's like basically tracing the outline in front of him of a horse. He's going to cast Find Steed and run out there.
Shit. What if they're signaling someone into town?
Now, Lloyd, can you quickly just tell me, Find Steed, what that actually does, just so I don't like make a mistake with this?
Yes, it takes me 10 minutes to cast, but I summon a spirit animal, a spirit that assumes the form of an unusually intelligent, strong, and loyal steed. So it's going to be a horse, like a war horse.
There is a flash further on the horizon as the gate of Gar-El awakens. And you see in the distance, galloping towards you at unnatural speed, a gleaming, almost silver steed. And it's like it stops just short of town. And it's standing there. And as you tentatively step from the gates, you see this creature that's pawing its hoof at the ground. And it looks at you with confidence.
Whew. Marius would approach and like pat it on the neck and say, all right, let's go find out what's going on.
And heaving yourself off into the saddle, you ride. It doesn't take a perception check to notice, however, the crossbow bolt that just misses you. Marius, roll initiative.
Oh boy.
You signed up for this.
I totally did.
Okay, so that's surprise round. So from out of the darkness, you see, also on horseback, a figure riding almost parallel to you. There is a glint of silver. This appears to be a scout of Advent, one that has likely ridden ahead and is now going to try and make an escape whilst firing at you. So he does so again. Is your shield up whilst you're on a horse? I don't know, Lloyd.
I don't know mechanically how that works, but he would have a shield on him. But I don't know. I would say no.
I'll say yes. Yeah.
Okay.
In that case, then that hits. That is that's 6 points of damage as a crossbow bolt sinks into your thigh.
Okay.
But it is now your turn, and you can see that he's used basically his movement to try and dash away as far as he can from the town.
Yeah, I will. This new powerful silver steed rippling beneath me, I will like as fast as I can use mechanically my dash action or my horse's dash action to like run up, and then I'm going to try and get the hammer and smash the back leg of his horse.
Okay.
And it's a 19 to hit the horse.
Easily connects.
Excellent. I'm going to smite that horse.
Smite the horse.
It's got to be done. He cannot be allowed to escape.
Further continuing my theory that you hate horses. For more information, see Against the Shadow.
Jesus Christ, that's going to be a total of 25 damage.
The horse's leg gives out completely and clatters into the ground. Mud, dirt goes up as the Scout of Advent is pinned beneath his steed that is killed outright from shock.
I will. Sorry, it's actually his turn, isn't it?
Oh no, he's down.
Okay, right. Then I will get off the horse and like I will hear like the squealing and the screaming of his horse and like take a dagger and put it out of its misery. But then I will approach him, and he's pinned beneath the horse, but nonetheless I'll put my boot on his chest and And I assume he's wearing those terrifying sort of silver helms that the rest of them had worn.
He certainly does. Yeah, the eye slit that is across the helm is the only thing that he would see through. And yeah, uniformed. They all look the same.
I will try and pull that helmet off his head.
You easily do, and you see an individual at the glint of the starlight above. An ordinary human man. Ordinary except that he has a vicious look in his eye. He has no hair, and he has no eyebrows. Pale blue eyes stare up at you, and he looks angry and in a huge amount of pain, and he gives a growl and he says, "You will release me."
No, I won't.
He gives a wild stab at you with you can see he had like a dagger that he'd managed to produce, but you're way out of the way of him. He can't move. He's stuck beneath this horse, and he gives a furious, frustrated growl as he something's broken under there as well, and he drops the blade and is panting. You can see sweat breaking out on him.
All right, so I figure I don't have much time, and so Marius is going to like put the hammer like in front of him and kneel. He's going to begin praying. He's going to cast Zone of Truth around this guy, which means he has to make a save. That is a charisma, I want to say save. Let me just double check. Sorry. And if he fails, he has to tell me the truth. Why are you taking so long to load now?
Okay. I would say it's either charisma or wisdom, right? Because if it's either, it's the same.
Charisma. I just looked it up. Charisma.
Nice. What was the save, Lloyd? Can you hear me?
Motherfucker froze up. Like
oh my goodness me. Okay, shit. Well, in that case, hopefully Lloyd will be back soon.
He got so excited he exploded.
Yeah, the internet exploded on him. That is a bummer. But I mean, dramatically, that leaves that hanging out in the air. You've just seen Marius disappear onto the horizon. I'm going to say the first to the wall once Marius had basically made that quick summons and then darted from the walls. Karrde, you're looking over the wall.
Now I went looking for Taxes to wake him up.
Oh, you did? You did, yeah. Didn't you?
So we might, if we're there by now, then he's with me. So we might be there. Though. It might have been that long.
In fact, I'll just say all of you are there. You were all alerted at the same time.
Okay,
that's
cool.
Fine.
So yeah, we're looking out over the wall.
Yeah, certainly.
Shit, where did he go? Azerax will wave his hand and 4 orbs of light will shoot out into the darkness as I cast dancing lights and shoot them out to try to locate where homeboy is. And you know what? If those, he'll turn to his friends. He'll say, they already know that we're here. I mean, we might as well give them a light show.
And the light goes up like an emergency flare over the terrain, over Marius as he continues to cast the Zone of Truth.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, it's a charisma save.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Locris looked it up too, and he rolled. What was the DC he has to make, mate?
14.
He has failed.
Okay, so then I'll ask him exactly how far behind you are they?
And as you say this, the light that Azerax has cast into the air sort of illuminates the area around you. And you can see the light glinting in very, very pale blue eyes. And he gives a smirk and he says, by this time tomorrow, they will be here and they will be ready to lay your pathetic defenses low.
I'll ask him, What do you think happens when you die?
Nothing at all.
Are you afraid?
I fear. And he stops and he sort of looks almost as if over your shoulder and he says, and then he looks afraid and he says, I fear failure.
Well, you failed. And then I'll smash the hammer into his face.
The three of you standing on the wall just hear a dull thud, a crack.
And Karrde will say, Marius got the last word.
The next morning, Marius, I'm guessing, will have imparted this information to you.
Of course.
And there is a hurried attempt to finish the defenses. All is completed. Taxes' trap formation is fully laid out. Basically, the eastern gate, if siege now, is just going to be a murder walkway. Anything coming in there is likely not going to do well. Well, depending on how many go through it. Or the drills continue. Marius, you're still trying to enforce as much discipline into the fighting rhythm as you can.
Yeah, I think it probably looks like a montage, where it's slowly but surely it's getting better, but it's actually not getting much better. Like, they don't ever reach that third part of the montage where they're doing it right. They're slightly better than they were, but they're still in no way ready. And Marius is keenly aware of that.
Absolutely. And I ask of all of you, in the last day, is there anything else you wish to prepare?
I imagine that at some point while Marius is going through his training drills, Azerax would run up and say, Marius, a word.
Of course. What do you need?
So, I know we're going to bottleneck them there, I understand. If we let some of them in, I can probably cut their number in half. I would wait for you to give the word before I do that, but just let me know, because I do not want to cast a hindering spell on the fine townsfolk as well. It would be better if I have a moment before they engage to do so.
Of course. So you mean when they're about to come through the second gate?
I think so. I will try to stuff them in a tangled web or something like that.
Perfect. I will. Well, the hope would be that they would charge into our spear wall, so we won't be charging them. So there'll be time.
Okay, just give the word. I will wait for your command. And let's just say, if you were sieging this area, I mean, you've done an amazing job. He looks over at the torn down buildings, and there's this new wall. Even though it's probably ramshackle, it looks sturdy. He says, I'm not a military man, but I've read about sieges, and I know oftentimes there are tricks. They climb the wall, they do a thing here. Where are other possible points of entry?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have anything stone, and so everything is burnable. If I was looking at this place, I would. Well, I guess I'd go to the graveyard. Seems the obvious route. But then I would avoid the gatehouses. The walls aren't sturdy enough. They can just go through the walls instead of the gatehouses.
Okay.
That's my thought.
So Azerax will pull out. He's got a small piece of cloth and he opens it up, and you can see that he's got 4 or 5 masks in there. They look like they're the potter's work. They look kind of like Rob's performance check masks. And he goes over to where you instruct, and he hangs it up on the wall there. And he's like, watch this. He goes up on the top and then hops down, and you'll see the mask, if I may do this, Rob, it actually, for me to do this, I need some expensive components. So as long as there's an apiary where I can get some honeycomb and a rich refugee who's got a jade necklace, I can pull this off. So before I describe it, would I be able to get those two components?
I think absolutely. And to be honest, I think Azerax is so meticulous over the details of components needed for spells. Even if you can't find exactly the right spell component, you can kind of like do cheat codes on it and kind of make your own, and it still work because you put that much work into it. So you're absolutely able to pull it off.
Absolutely. So Azerax hops up onto the parapet, and then like he hang drops down, and as soon as he's like in the air falling down, you can see that the mouth on the mask begins to move, and a bellowing Azerax's voice comes from it, and it says, "Avast ye, Advent swine! You will be cut down! Behold, they're coming through the east wall." And he does a different one for like the different points where they might come through as I cast Magic Mouth.
Fuck yes.
Amazing.
So I'm just gonna try. That's what I'm doing for the day. I'm trying to set up alarms so that they can't backstab us, pretty much.
Amazing. And as you do so, you actually notice that Marik at that very point has actually like come to see what you were doing and is like totally alarmed and shocked by this, but wordlessly looks at you in respect, Azerax. Taxes, is there anything that you want to do with your final preparations?
Yeah, I think it's Karrde and myself are walking this eastern side together. And he looks to Karrde.
Karrde, look, I'm not sure if I did this right. Honestly, I'm just pulling it out of my ass at this point. But hey, if things go south, I want to have a backup plan. I'll wait for us to escape, if need be.
And he reaches into his pouch, and he grabs out those Lux bomb grenades that we had gathered from underneath.
I want you to take some of the boys. I want you to line this place with flammables. If things go rough, and they might, we need a way to escape. Get the hell out of here. So, plant these in the trenches.
He takes them from you, and he says, he looks and he says, "Well, I beg your pardon, Taxes, but things go wrong here. I won't be escaping." And he looks down at your feet, Taxes, and we're on this little path, but just near the side of it, you'll see a hefty, just large stone headstone. And it says "Kill Ganon" just big right on the front. And it's not the only Kill Ganon headstone in the town of Kilgannon by a long shot, but you can tell by the way Karrde is looking at it that he knows who's buried underneath it. And he says, "If this is going to be the last place these people are at," and he looks at all of these people who have gathered to defend their own lives in their own town, "well, then count me a part of them." He pockets the, what was it called? The thing that you gave him? What did you call it?
They're Lux bomb grenades.
Lux bombs. So. Yeah, Lux bomb grenades. He pockets it and he says, "You ain't getting your bombs back though."
I like you, Karrde. Just use them wisely. When we need them, I can light them up.
He nods, smiles, and walking away, he looks around and says, "Defenses look good, by the way, and that's the most important thing." That's what my dad always told me was, as long as it looked good, that was the number one thing. Doesn't matter how it works.
It don't have to look pretty to work.
That's why we like you so much, Taxes. And he laughs and walks off towards Marius. where Marius might be.
And Marius is walking up and down in front of the army that he's assembled. If you can call them an army, you can barely call them a militia. But he's proud of them for what they've achieved so far. He's like walking up and down in front of them, and you can see that like they're standing a little bit taller, and they're holding their weapons as actual weapons as opposed to like tools. And he's like walking around, looking at them, and occasionally he'll like pat one of them on the shoulder or like adjust like a strap on like a bit of leather or something. And I guess we all kind of gather, and he would say, listen to me, you people. I have fought with witch hunters and the drow beneath the earth, and with mystic knights, and with dragonborn, and all of the most powerful warriors that exist in this world. And they have one thing in common, and that is a certainty of purpose. They know what they're about. They know what they're fighting for. And that is the greatest asset that we can have here. We need to be sure of what we need to do. We cannot allow them to break into this town. We cannot allow them to take this place from us. This is your home. This is the home of your forefathers, and we will defend it or die trying. And we will make them pay for every fucking inch they try to move forward, and every inch will cost them a mile in blood. I'm a man of the gods, and I will call down their blessings on you this day, and they will bless us because our cause is just. Fight bravely, fight together, and we will be victorious.
And they respond to you. And maybe it's because you've drilled into their minds that they listen and do everything that you say, Marius. But you see inspiration filling their eyes as you give this these commands and this speech. And then, as you're all assembled and the sun begins to sink beneath the horizon once again, you are all collected before you're about to take your positions. And Lyra actually moves to you, Karrde, her hand to your elbow. And she looks at you. Now, I don't personally know whether anything has ever happened between you two, and maybe we won't ever find out, but she looks at you with an intimacy and with a love of someone that has known you for most of your life. And she says, Karrde, I know you're not... well, you're a man of words, but you're a man of a certain type of words. But all the same, I think it would do for the people of this town and the people that you've led here to hear from you as well. This is your home.
He stares at Lyra for a time and looks down at her hand on his elbow and is surprised momentarily at how nice his clothes look, as he's been outfitted with, some newer stuff, some more, some cleaner things. He's almost like he feels like a different person. He looks back up to her, and he looks to the crowd of people that Marius has stirred up, and they are kind of talking amongst themselves and feeling motivated amongst themselves. And he looks back to her, and he shakes his head, just subtly, with a smile on his face. And he looks back to Marius and shakes his head one more time, and just dwells in the moment of motivated satisfaction from that the people are displaying from Marius's words. He stands in silence, and takes a glance in the distance towards a solitary headstone on a hill as he waits.
And content that that's all of the motivation you will ever get from Karrde, Ganon, Lyra smiles. And you take your positions.
And he says, and if you wanted to call me stupid, you didn't need to tell me that I use certain types of words. And then he walks off.
And something is noticed, not by Lyra, not by Marius or Azerax or Taxes. Something is noticed by Grim. As Karrde walks away to take his position within the graveyard, Grim takes note that Karrde's Lorekeeper ability hasn't just activated. It's been there the whole time. It slowly begins to start raining. And it isn't difficult to see what approaches. "1,000 strong forces of Silverguard approach the town of Kilgannon. They move in unison, marching with purpose. Advent is change. Advent is progress. Advent is the future. And it's almost like they're taking their time. They form up outside of the city, almost expertly understanding the range of missile weapons and how far they can reach. And they stand there silently, waiting. There is a nervous chill that goes through the silent ranks of all of those that you've trained and all of those that you've prepared. Yet they do not move.
Azerax feels fear grip his spine like an icy skeletal hand. He looks over at Marius and remembers his words. Feel the fear, overcome the fear. He begins speaking. He doesn't even realize that he's doing it at first. Feel the fear, overcome the fear. I'm afraid. He turns to the people gathered here. I'm afraid. But you know what? I'm going to fight them. I'm not going to let them win today. In fact, I will tell you something about Advent, about their leader, Equinox. He is frightening, of course. But his power comes from the fear. The scout that Marius cut down last night, he was not afraid of anything except he was afraid of Equinox. That is how Equinox is able to do what he does. I told you a story of the Lorekeepers, and it was clear of the slander that he has spread about us. But we did not kill the king of freedom salvation. He did. We did not burn your city. He did. And his legacy is only spread through fear. Marius is the greatest military mind I've ever met. Taxes and Karrde. Just wait until Advent comes upon us. They do not know what they're expecting. Do not be afraid. But if you feel afraid, it's okay to feel it. Overcome it. Because this is our night. This is our moment. You know, it reminds me of a story. It's a short story. Don't worry. You know how a halfling enters into an honest business? Through the skylight. And he will laugh. He will laugh and bellow at the top of his lungs.
And I'm sorry, I just wasn't ready for that. And as you laugh, and it's been said before that that most drow, particularly Azerax, when he laughs, it's always got like the hint of maniacal laughter about it, you know. But regardless, they join you in this elation. This is a do or die, and they seem to rally at your joke, laughing almost nervously, but ready for the task ahead.
Marius
Then you
doesn't
hear the
laugh at all.
flickering.
Marius is like standing atop a wall, and the rain is like ding 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 on his armor. And like he looks at them laughing, and he hears Azerax laughing, and he's seen this lots of times, the sort of gallows laughter, like we're about to die, let's make a joke of it. But he doesn't find it funny. He sees 1,000 enemies arrayed against 100, and he's not laughing.
And it's at this point that Azerax, you hear the flickering of Grim.
Yeah, Azerax will open it up.
And he says, Azerax, something's wrong.
Don't tell me something's wrong right now, Grim. What is it?
The telling. I can't feel it. And a voice echoes in your head, Azerax. The telling is mine. I am the telling incarnate. Behind the forces of Advent, the gate of Gar-El erupts with golden energy as creatures of blazing light emerge from the gate. And it is then that the Silver Guard begin their approach. Rain pours down harder, thunder rolls, and lightning arcs across the sky. Karrde. The lightning reminds you of the night you met Equinox as a boy. And you feel a hand on your elbow once again, comforting. And you turn to look at Lyra. And she looks back with blazing yellow eyes. And that is where we will leave our heroes tonight.
Oh,
You
man.
son of a bitch, Rob.
Oh.
God damn.
I hadn't
Adam
decided what our past was yet. I got to figure out why I care. Oh no, it's gonna be even better. I'm gonna come up with something just heart wrenching before stabbing her in the chest.
Oh god.
So, thank you very much, guys. This, I've got to admit, I didn't for 1 minute foresee this session being like what it was, but I'm so glad it was what it turned out to be. So before we finish out, yeah, let's do what we always do, and we're going to go through the players. You give a thought of the game, and sign off. But I just want to say that I really enjoyed that, particularly in the moments where I was able to sit back and let you guys do your thing. Like, I'll go into it in a bit more detail, but first of all, Chad, why don't you give us your final thought before we go?
Let me just grab the rest of my chest and put it back in place, because, like, oh my god, dude, like, I was getting so excited for war, and then all that happened, man. Oh my god. Okay, so yeah, no, one of my favorite parts of the game, though, hands down, very minimal combat. What I loved about this whole thing was the preparation building. Each one of us having a role to play within, sort of building the base for this operation. That alone gave so much room for role play and really cool effects. And, like, there were moments in this game where I felt crestfallen, and I loved that. Because that crestfallen moment then, like, came up to motivation and excitement for what's to come. You did it again, Rob. I hate you, and I love it. And thank you.
Thank you,
Oh
man.
my god.
I, particularly with taxes today, I liked that we saw the consequences of him losing his shit, which I really liked, and you did just amazingly. So nice one, man. Look, Chris, a thought of the game.
My name's Lorekeepers, and I love playing in this game. Ah, man, there's a lot of really great thoughts. I feel like my favorite moments were, I don't know, the whole game. I love those parts where I love those conversations that we have as characters. Those, like, little asides, little, like, mini conversation here. I'm glad that we got to hear, like, a little bit more from Grim too. That was cool. I loved Marius's preparation. I loved the part when Chad cut that motherfucker down, and me and Karrde were like, oh no, it was horrible. It's like, I feel like every session there's, like, gut-wrenching heartbreak, but there's also hope. You know, not a lot of hope at the end of this one. But I can't wait for the next one, man. It was great. And Rob, happy birthday, man. You are the man. Oh, that was yesterday for you.
Nah, he can take today too.
It still counts in Chad's time zone, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, mine too, actually.
Mine too, yeah.
Oh, yours, are you still in it? Okay, that's cool.
For
Then
25 minutes, Lorekeepers is in it.
25 minutes. Perfect. Thanks, man. And yeah, just amazing from you, man. Like the spell descriptions as well. Always with the spell descriptions from you, man. Just great stuff. And Vaka.
This session was just a pure example of how much we just enjoy role playing with each other, you know, just describing our characters, doing stuff with another person's character, and just, like, having moments and conversations. And, you know, as Chad mentioned, the preparation was really cool. We each had the freedom twice to describe something specific that we were doing, which I imagine you'll be using in the next session, and we'll be able to follow through with those things. Grim is an awesome tool to I don't know, it's strange because Grim doesn't necessarily, in my mind, doesn't push the plot forward. Grim exists to remind us that there's this thing happening, you know, and I like Grim as this conduit of information about this certain thing, this certain force that we're facing, and you do really well. All of that is leading up to say that the best part about this session, I do not care what anybody says, was when Lorekeepers was about to heal that guy, and I delayed it and that guy died. That was in my mind, that's the number one thing that happened this session was I freaking killed a guy. As far as I'm concerned, that guy would be our prisoner. I would be remembering his name right now. I would have written it down because he would have been more important. Now he is wrecked because 100%, well, 85% because of me.
Yardley.
Nah, I don't care.
Forgettable man. Forgettable man, and that's kind of it. He was just an ordinary dude, really. But no, yeah, I with Grim, I always looked at Grim as basically your Jarvis to the 4 of your Iron Man, basically. Like he's kind of like the heads-up display. He's telling you information that you need to know. But yeah, that bit where he died, yeah, that was great. And and Lloyd.
Yeah, I loved it. I hope it's not giving too much away. Like we talked about this the other day about what was going to happen with this game, and I had said to you, like, you know, I would really love some quiet time, like some downtime, and like I think like I just adored that this session, like time for us to sit around and shoot the shit, and like, you know, everyone has said, like just like role play, and you know, there wasn't like a huge like dun dun dun, like fucking, you know, which there has been in the previous 2 sessions. You know, we had the Kraken, and then we had the floor opening and stuff with the Inquisitor. So I like that this was a little bit more contained, a little more quiet, and like more real. You know, I just really like that we got to shoot the shit. I love the imagery of like going to a village and just being like, okay, so we got to get this shit together. It's like 7 samurai, it's like 13 assassins, like all that sort of just like building up nothing into a staunch defense somehow. And yeah, I love the real consequence of like not healing that guy immediately and him dying. Like that was really good, because I was kicking myself out because I was gonna be like, I jump over there and I heal him because that's what I usually do, but it didn't. And then he died, which is great. Like he didn't like hang on somehow. Like his legs got cut off. Of course he's dead, which is great.
Yep.
Yeah. So overall, just fucking great. Well done.
Thanks, man. And yeah, I did because I was having real trouble with this session because I was like, well, I kind of had a rough idea of what I was going to go for, and then I ended up thinking, well, we've had all these spectacular, amazing battles where the Lorekeepers are supposedly inspiring people, but we still need more time learning what you're actually fighting for, and it's for the people of Farwyde, and you're starting to meet more of them and more of them.
I'm really happy you didn't decide to rush it, Rob. You know, when we were just like taking it slow, I'm really happy you didn't push us in the direction. We found our way there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, I usually leave the titles for the next session, and I can tease them whatever, but the next session I can quite easily say is Lorekeepers Chapter 9, The Battle of Ganon.
Yes.
So without further ado, I will say thank you once again to my excellent players. Thank you to you, the audience, live or after the fact. Always great to have you guys watching and commenting in the chat. I'll be hanging out for a little bit in the chat afterwards. And all this to say, thanks for watching, and I hope that all of your performances are up to standard. Wink. See you later, guys.